I woke up to someone screaming that I should be dragged out and killed. When I opened my eyes, I was inside a huge tent made of animal hides and bones. Standing all around me were centaurs, creatures with human upper bodies and horse lower bodies. They were big, muscular, and they all looked at me with hate. I looked down at myself. I had a normal human body. That was the problem. Memories flooded into my head, memories that weren't mine. I was the son of the old Centaur King, but I was born looking fully human, which my people saw as a curse. My father died in a war, and my mother died of grief soon after. Without their protection, the tribe treated me like garbage. The original owner of this body couldn't take it anymore and killed himself. Now I, Qin Hao, a soul from Earth, had taken over his body. The leader of the elders, a massive centaur named Boros, was demanding my death. The only person defending me was Luna, a beautiful centaur woman with silver hair and a white horse body. She was my bodyguard and childhood friend, the only person who ever showed me kindness. She stood in front of me with a spear, ready to die for me. Boros sentenced me to death and swung his axe at us. I thought I was done for. Then a voice rang out in my head. "A system activated, some kind of magical power that rewards me for finding partners and having children. The stronger and more talented the partner, the bigger the reward." It gave me my first mission, propose to Luna and get her to agree. The reward would be a chance to transform my body into a centaur form, plus blueprints for stirrup technology, a huge upgrade for cavalry. This was my chance to survive. I pushed Luna aside and stepped forward to face Boros myself. I shouted that nobody was allowed to touch her. Everyone froze. Then I announced that Luna would be my queen, the only queen of the Centaur tribe. The elders laughed and called me insane. Boros was furious and swung his axe at my head again. I grabbed Luna's hand, looked into her shocked purple eyes, and asked her one question. "Will you accept?" She just stared at me, completely lost for words. My announcement hit everyone like a thunderbolt. The whole place went dead silent. Every centaur was staring at me and Luna. Me, the trash king, they were about to execute, holding the hand of their beloved goddess. Luna was frozen stiff. Her face turned red from anger and embarrassment. She hissed at me to let go. The crowd erupted. They were calling me crazy, saying I was insulting their goddess, demanding my death even louder than before. Boros, the elder, was furious. He'd planned everything perfectly to have me killed like a dog, and now I'd turned his whole show upside down. He ordered the guards to arrest both me and Luna, and he deliberately called her tainted and disgraced to destroy her reputation too. I realized his real goal. By ruining Luna, he'd crush the last family still loyal to the royal bloodline. Dozens of blades came out. The circle around us was shrinking. Luna looked lost. She didn't know who to point her spear at anymore. That's when I played my real card. I called her name calmly and gave her a direct order. "As my queen, your first duty is to protect your king. Draw your spear. Stand in front of me." That's a command. It worked. Luna had sworn a blood oath to protect the king, no matter who that king was. Her training and her loyalty kicked in. She pulled out her silver spear, stepped in front of me, and faced down the entire guard with wind-powered energy glowing at her spear tip. Then I used my second card, Tribal Law. I reminded everyone that according to ancient rules, the king's tent is sacred ground. Nobody can enter it without permission until the king is officially removed from power. I announced that I was going back to my royal tent with my queen, and I dared anyone to stop us. The guards hesitated. Breaking into the king's tent would be the same as rebellion, a crime none of them wanted on their heads. Boros was shaking with rage. He'd used tradition to try to overthrow me, and now that same tradition was protecting me. He ordered the guards to surround the tent instead, figuring he'd just starve us out. Luna and I walked into the royal tent under hundreds of hostile stares. The heavy curtain fell behind us, shutting out the world. I'd bought myself some time. Now I just had to figure out what to do with it. Once the tent curtain closed behind us, Luna slammed her spear into the ground and turned on me. She was shaking with anger, demanding to know what I'd done. She said I'd ruined her and her family's honor. I told her the truth she didn't want to hear. If I'd been executed, she wouldn't have been spared either. Boros would have punished her whole family for being loyal to the crown. At best, she'd be exiled. At worst, she'd be handed off to one of Boros's allies like a prize. Her honor was already hanging by a thread since my father died. That hit her hard. She knew I was right, but had been refusing to see it. Still, she pointed out we were trapped, surrounded by soldiers with no way out. I told her there was one way. The system had given me a task. If Luna and I truly became husband and wife, I'd unlock the power to transform my body and save us both. Obviously, I couldn't explain magic system in my head, so I made up a story about an ancient royal secret, that when a king joins with a woman carrying the blood of the legendary moon stallion, the ancestor's power awakens. I told her the Moon Hoof family carried that bloodline, and that my father had shared this secret before he died. She hesitated. She'd actually seen something about this in old family scrolls. I swore on my title as king that if she helped me, she could leave or even kill me afterward. Outside, the guards were already banging on the tent, giving us a final warning before they'd break in. Luna closed her eyes, tears still on her lashes, and gave in. What happened next? Well, let's skip ahead. The tent door was ripped open. Boros charged in with his best soldiers, expecting to find us cowering. Instead, he was blinded by golden light. That light was coming from me. My weak human body was gone. My legs had been replaced by a powerful horse body covered in golden scales. My forehooves looked like they were made of pure gold, burning with golden flames. Every step I took shook the ground. Raw, crushing power radiated from me like a wave. The soldiers who rushed and dropped to their knees instantly. They couldn't even hold their weapons. Boros himself was standing, but barely. All four of his legs were shaking, his teeth chattering. The golden sacred hooves. The ancestor's body. Impossible, he stammered. The system confirmed everything in my head. The mission was complete. Luna had been rated an A partner. My rewards were massive. My body had evolved into a golden centaur, my strength and physical stats had jumped from 1 to 50, and I'd awakened basic combat energy. On top of that, the tribe received blueprints for horseshoe forging and advanced steelmaking techniques. I looked down at Boros with my new golden eyes and smiled. So, Elder, I said, my voice deeper and stronger than before, whose death were you announcing again? When I stepped out of the royal tent, every centaur in the tribe saw what I'd become. Thousands of them just stood there with their mouths open, staring at my golden horse body and the glowing scales covering it. I looked exactly like the ancestor statue on their altar, the legendary founder of the tribe. I could feel the shift. The same people who'd been looking at me with disgust moments ago were now staring with shock, awe, and fear. Boros panicked. He could see he was losing control, so he started screaming that I was a fake, a demon wearing the king's face. He exploded with his full power, some kind of rock-type battle energy at the peak of the 3rd level, and charged straight at me like a cannonball. His fists were wrapped in stone armor, aimed right at my heart. A few loyal guards followed his lead, attacking from different directions. I just watched him come. With my stats at 50 for both strength and constitution, his so-called peak attack looked like a child throwing a tantrum, slow and weak. I didn't even bother using my newly awakened battle energy. I simply raised my right fist and met his punch head-on. No special technique, no flashy moves. Just a plain, raw punch. Our fists collided with a deafening boom. For about 1/10 of a second, nothing happened. Then I heard cracking sounds. His stone armor shattered like an eggshell. The force traveled through his fist, crushing every bone in his fingers, wrist, and arm. He screamed. His massive body flew backward, smashing through 3 guard captains who'd been charging behind him. He crashed into a huge stone table used for council meetings and broke it to pieces. He lay there in the rubble, his right arm bent at a sickening angle, coughing up blood, barely alive. The most powerful elder in the tribe, defeated with 1 punch. Every soldier who'd been rushing at me froze in place. Their weapons suddenly felt too heavy to lift. I could see the same word written on every face, fear. I pulled my fist back. There wasn't even a mark on it. I looked around slowly, letting my golden eyes meet each warrior's gaze. Every single one who caught my stare lowered their head. I spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. The elder said my blood was impure. He said I had no achievements. He said nobody would follow me. I took 1 step forward. My golden hoof rang against the stone like a bell. Does this ancestor's body count as pure blood? Does crushing a traitor with 1 punch count as an achievement? Nobody said a word. I walked up to the guard captains who were still trying to pick themselves up off the ground. I looked down at them. As for whether you'll follow me, I paused and let the silence do its work. Do you submit or not? Do you submit or not? That was all I had to ask. The guard captains who'd been knocked down by Boros's flying body pressed their foreheads to the ground and screamed for mercy. That set off a chain reaction. Nearly 100 soldiers dropped their weapons and fell to their knees, one after another, like a field of wheat flattened by wind. But it wasn't over yet. A young centaur, even bigger than Boros, came charging out of the crowd with red eyes and a massive battle axe. It was below, Boros's son, the strongest warrior of the younger generation. He called me a monster and a fraud, saying I'd used dark magic to defeat his father. From the rubble, the dying Boros managed to croak out the same accusation. I could see doubt creeping back into the soldier's eyes. Below was clever with his words. He told everyone that if I could use sorcery to kill his father today, I could use it to kill any of them tomorrow. I knew one display of power wasn't enough. I needed to crush every last doubt. So I grabbed an ordinary spear from a nearby guard, a basic iron-tipped weapon with a chipped blade and dents all over the shaft. I pointed it at Below and told him to come prove his worth. He was thrilled. He thought a real weapon fight was his chance to win. He charged at me with everything he had, pouring all his third-level battle energy into his axe. The blow was supposed to be strong enough to split an armored rhinoceros in half. I just stood there and waited. When his axe was about a meter from my face, I thrust the spear forward. One simple stab. No special energy, no fancy technique. Just pure speed and strength. The axe shattered like glass the instant it touched my spear tip. Metal fragments exploded in every direction. My spear kept going and tapped his chest, punching straight through his battle energy armor like popping a balloon. The force caved in his ribs and sent him spiraling backward into the tribe's massive totem pole, snapping it in half. Below was dead before he hit the ground. A hole the size of a bowl in his chest, eyes empty. This time nobody could call it sorcery. There had been no energy glow, no strange tricks. It was pure skill, speed, power, and precision that only a true master could achieve. Combined with my golden body, this was proof. Not a trick, not dark magic. A miracle. Someone dropped to the ground and shouted, "King," then another. Then hundreds. The chanting shook the whole plaza. This time it wasn't fear driving them, it was real belief. I pulled the spear back. A single drop of blood slid down the blade and hit the stone floor. I walked over to Below's body, picked up the broken totem pole, and set it upright again. Then I carried his shattered axe up to the high platform, faced the entire tribe, and spoke. From this day forward, I am the only voice of the Wind-Hoof tribe. I paused. Follow me, and you'll thrive. I tossed the broken axe onto the steps with a loud clang. Stand against me, and you'll die. Over the next 2 days, I focused on securing my power, not through fear alone, but through smart leadership. I didn't punish the ordinary soldiers who'd followed Boros. I pardoned them all, which turned a third of the tribe from terrified subjects into grateful ones. The guard captains who'd led the charge got a lighter punishment, half a year's pay docked, and the job of rebuilding the wrecked plaza. As for Boros himself, I kept him alive on purpose, locking him and his crippled son Below in the deepest dungeon. A living, broken example is more useful than a dead one. But fear and mercy only go so far. I needed to give the tribe something real. I gathered all 30-something craftsmen, blacksmiths, carpenters, leatherworkers, and brought them to the forge. The head blacksmith, an old stubborn centaur named Kazga, wasn't impressed by my fighting. He only cared about hammers and fire. I told him straight. Our weapons were garbage. What we called steel was basically soft iron, fine for small fights, useless against armored enemies. He was stunned I knew this much, since he'd only ever complained about it to his apprentices when drunk. Then I introduced them to a technique from the system's reward. I called it hundredfold steel. I dressed it up as wisdom from the ancestors, of course. I spent half a day guiding them through every step. Higher furnace temperatures, layered iron and charcoal, stirring the molten metal to burn out impurities, then folding and hammering the steel over 100 times. When the first blade was finished and quenched, even I was impressed. It had beautiful flowing patterns along the surface. Kazga tested it against the best existing weapon in the tribe. The old blade chipped. The new one was untouched. Then he swung it at a testing stone that soldiers used to measure their strength. It sliced clean through like butter, leaving a mirror-smooth cut. The old blacksmith dropped the blade and fell to his knees, crying. Every craftsman followed. They weren't just impressed, they believed I was chosen by the ancestors. The system rewarded me again. Full blueprints for horseshoe making, plans for a special building called the breeding temple that would improve the quality of future offspring, and my battle energy jumped to second level. Then came the biggest notification yet. Luna was pregnant, and not just pregnant. My golden bloodline had activated a dormant power in her moon's stallion bloodline, awakening a legendary ability called Divine Twins. Our first children would be twins. Double the offspring, double the rewards. I rushed back to the royal tent. Luna was just stepping out, looking pale and tired. She mentioned she'd been feeling exhausted and nauseous lately. She didn't know why yet. I pulled her into my arms and told her gently, "Our children are healthy." Her eyes went wide, then filled with tears, a mix of shock, joy, shyness, and the first hint of a mother's pride. But the moment didn't last. A scout came galloping in at full speed with urgent news. A scouting party of at least 30 warriors from the Blackhorn tribe had been spotted at our eastern border. The Blackhorn tribe was based in the eastern mountains, bigger than us, stronger than us, and known for being brutal and war-hungry. The question hit me immediately. Why were they here? The Blackhorn tribe's scouting party had everyone on edge. I called a meeting with all the guard captains and veteran hunters to figure out what to do. The old-timers warned me that the Blackhorn tribe never showed up without a reason, and we were in bad shape, fresh off an internal power struggle with morale still shaky. Right in the middle of our discussion, someone barged in. A striking centaur woman with wild red hair braided into dozens of small braids, decorated with bones and feathers. She was tall, athletic, tan-skinned, and carried a battle axe way too big for most people. Everything about her screamed, untamed. Her name was Freya, Boros' niece, and after Below's death, she'd become the leader of the Elders faction, commanding over 100 of the tribe's toughest young warriors. She demanded I release her uncle out of mercy for his old age. Everyone knew this wasn't just about kindness. It was a political power play, a test to see how far she could push me. I wasn't angry. Actually, I found her interesting. Bold, strong, and reckless in a useful way. The system agreed. It triggered a hidden quest called Taming the Wild Mare, challenging me to make Freya my willing partner for bonus rewards. I told her that releasing Boros would just invite more trouble. She offered the loyalty of her entire squad of 103 warriors in exchange. I told her that kind of loyalty was cheap. Her cousin Below had felt loyal too, right before I killed him. That made her furious. So I laid out my real terms. Marry me and become my second queen. The whole room went silent. Everyone thought I was insane. Marrying the niece of the man who tried to kill me? Freya exploded. She said she'd only marry a man who could beat her in a fair fight, without relying on bloodline powers or sorcery. I told her I wouldn't lose and ordered everyone to the arena. Half an hour later, the entire tribe had gathered to watch. Freya stood in the center wearing just a tight vest and shorts, gripping her giant axe, looking like a volcano about to erupt. I walked in shirtless with a plain spear. Luna watched from the sidelines with a complicated expression. She believed in my strength, but I could tell she wasn't thrilled about the situation. The fight started. Freya launched her signature move, a spinning fire tornado attack with her axe wrapped in flame energy. It was powerful and flashy, but I didn't use my golden battle energy at all. I just used technique. I moved like a bullfighter, dodging her axe by inches, tapping her blade at precise angles to slow her spin and mess up her energy flow. Every hit of mine drained her momentum. She was swinging a hammer at Cotton, all power, no effect. She switched tactics with a brutal overhead chop. I blocked it with my spear shaft, then flicked my wrist. The spear slid up along her axe handle like a snake, and I smacked her wrist. She yelped, the axe flew out of her hands, and it was over. Total victory through pure skill. I hadn't used a drop of my golden power. Before she could process what happened, I stepped forward, grabbed her around the waist, and threw her over my shoulder like a sack of grain. The crowd went wild, howling and laughing. She turned bright red, pounding my back with her fists, screaming at me to put her down. I carried her over to her squad of warriors, set her down, but kept my arm around her waist so she couldn't run. Then, in front of everyone, I spoke. Freya, you're a warrior worthy of respect. Your courage and strength have earned my admiration. I, Qin Hao, king of the Windhoof tribe, formally ask for your hand. Will you be my queen and help me lead this tribe to greatness? I'd beaten her with skill, then offered her honor instead of humiliation. It was the perfect combination: crush the pride, then rebuild it on my terms. She stood there frozen, her fierce eyes glistening. Her struggling got weaker and weaker. Finally, she turned her face away, bit her lip, and whispered just loud enough for me to hear. I submit. Freya's quiet. I submit. Set off a roar from the crowd. Her 100+ warriors knelt as one and pledged loyalty to me. Just like that, the biggest remaining threat inside the tribe became my strongest new asset. But I didn't let anyone celebrate for long. I reminded everyone that the Blackhorn tribe scouts were still out there, and we needed to prepare for war, not throw a party. When a veteran captain pointed out that we had less than half their numbers and couldn't win a straight fight, I told him nobody said anything about fighting fair. I ordered every craftsman and blacksmith back to the forge. It was time for my next move: horseshoes. I showed them a drawing of a U-shaped piece of steel meant to be nailed onto hooves. The reaction was exactly what I expected: horror. An old veterinarian called Woodenhoof Elder said it was blasphemy against the ancestors, basically self-mutilation. Even Freya looked worried, asking if I was going to cripple our own warriors. I told them words were useless. I'd prove it with a test. I asked for 10 volunteers to get horseshoes fitted, and had Freya pick 10 of her best unshod warriors. Then I mapped out a 50-li race across rocky slopes, a river with slippery stones, and a thorny forest. On flat ground, both teams were neck and neck. But the moment they hit the rocky slopes, everything changed. Freya's barefoot warriors had to slow down, wincing with every step, carefully picking where to place their hooves. My horseshoe team charged through like it was a paved road, their iron shoes clanking on the stones, not feeling a thing. In just a couple of minutes, they were over 100 meters ahead. The river crossing was even worse. Bare hooves slipped on wet stones. Several warriors nearly fell. The horseshoe team gripped the riverbed like they had claws, crossing quickly and steadily. By the time my team sprinted back to the finish line, Freya's group was still coming out of the forest. It wasn't even close. The whole tribe stared in silence at those shiny iron shoes. Then everyone started shouting at once, begging to get horseshoes of their own. The old veterinarian came to me with tears streaming down his face, bowed deeply, and called himself a fool. I helped him up and put him in charge of overseeing the fitting for every warrior. Freya came back with her defeated team, lowered her proud head, and admitted the horseshoes were something extraordinary. I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't just impressed by my strength anymore. She was starting to believe in my mind. Then a guard rushed in, dragging a beaten, bloodied prisoner, a captured Blackhorn scout. My stomach tightened as the guard delivered the news. Blackhorn's chief, a warlord called Blackhorn Savage Mane, had gathered 3,000 warriors and was marching straight for us. They wanted our food, our women, and my head. 3,000 against our fewer than 1,000. The joy from the horseshoe victory vanished instantly. Every face around me went pale. This wasn't going to be a battle. It was going to be a slaughter, unless I figured something out fast. The news about 3,000 Blackhorn warriors hit the tribe like a bomb. Within an hour, women were crying in their tents, soldiers looked hopeless, and morale had completely collapsed. The Blackhorn tribe was known for slaughtering every man and taking women and children as slaves. Surrender was never an option with them. They didn't accept it. Then the trouble inside started. In the middle of our war council, a man from the Stonehoof family spoke up, blaming me for everything. He said Boros had kept peace with the Blackhorn tribe, and that I'd brought this disaster on everyone. Others joined in. From his prison cell, Boros heard the panic and started shouting through the bars, telling people to tie me up and hand me over to the Blackhorn chief as a peace offering. The surrender faction was growing fast. Fear is poison. It makes people turn on their own. I stood up calmly and walked down to the man leading the calls to hand me over. His name was Shi Yen. I asked him one simple question. Did he really think feeding one person to wolves would make them stop hunting? I told the whole room the truth. The Blackhorn tribe came today for my head. Tomorrow they'd come for Freya's beauty. The day after, for their women and children. The moment a tribe hands over its own king, it hands over its spine. A tribe without a spine doesn't even qualify to be slaves. Then I grabbed Shi by the throat and snapped his neck. I had his followers dragged out and executed too. Their heads hung at the tribe's gates as a message. It was brutal, but the whispering stopped instantly. From the direction of the prison, Boros went silent. With order restored, I climbed the platform and gave them the speech they needed to hear. I told them I knew they were afraid, and that fear wasn't shameful, it was natural. But I reminded them that their ancestors hadn't survived by begging. They'd stomped through thorns and fought off beasts to build this tribe. That same blood ran in their veins, warrior blood, not coward blood. I pointed to the people around them. Their brothers, sisters, wives, children. The Blackhorn tribe was coming to take all of it. Will you allow that? No. A young warrior shouted first. Will you allow that? I roared again. And no, hundreds screamed back. I told them the enemy had numbers, but we had quality. They had greed, we had rage. I drew my steel blade and swore I'd be first to charge and last to retreat. My chest would be their shield. My spear would tear open the enemy's lines. Do you want to die on your knees or live on your feet? Live on our feet. Every warrior in the tribe, men and women alike, raised their weapons and roared. The fear was gone, replaced by fury and determination. Luna watched me with shining eyes. Freya's face was flushed with fire. I raised my hand for silence, turned to the sand table map, and pressed my finger down on it. Good. Since we've chosen to fight, let me tell you how we're going to win. Every eye locked onto that little map. They wanted to know how their king planned to beat an army 3 times their size. And I was about to show them. That night, I gathered all my officers around the sand table and laid out my plan. I used black stones for the enemy's 3,000 and white stones for our 1,000. The difference was brutal to look at. My strategy was simple. Abandon the front defense. Take everyone to a narrow canyon called One Line Sky on the eastern approach, the only route the Blackhorn army could take. Steep walls on both sides, barely wide enough for a small force. We'd let their vanguard walk in, seal the exit with boulders and logs, and slaughter them like fish in a barrel. Freya immediately pushed back. She said ambushes were the tactics of cowards and jackals, not proud centaur warriors. Several of her men agreed. They wanted a glorious head-on charge. I didn't argue. I just showed her on the sand table. 100 of our best warriors charging 300 enemies on open ground. We'd win, with maybe 30 survivors, all wounded. Then face the remaining 2,700 with nothing left. Now put those same 100 fighters on high ground above 300 enemies trapped in a tight canyon. Rocks raining down, arrows pouring in, then a charge from both sides into the chaos. Result: total victory with almost no losses. Freya stared at the sand table, sweating. She couldn't argue with the math. I sweetened the deal. Fight this ambush my way, and when the final battle comes, she could personally lead the first charge. That gave her the honor she needed. She agreed. Then I unveiled my next surprise. A crate full of weapons I called triangular bayonets. About 1.5 feet long, forged from our new steel, with a 3-sided blade designed for one purpose: killing. The wound it made couldn't be stitched closed, causing maximum bleeding. Every soldier in the strike team would be equipped with one. The next morning, we were in position. 500 fighters hidden on both sides of the canyon, silent as ghosts in the fog. The Blackhorn vanguard came strolling in. About 200 warriors, well-armed but sloppy. No scouts, loose formation, laughing and chatting. They didn't respect us enough to be careful. When the last one entered the canyon, I dropped my hand. Dozens of warriors shoved prepared boulders and logs down from above, sealing the exit with a thunderous crash. Before the enemy could process what happened, arrows poured down from both walls like rain. Then I gave the final order. I was the first one over the edge, golden body flashing as I leaped down with my bayonet-tipped spear. Freya charged from the other side with her warriors. The new weapons were devastating beyond anything I'd imagined. My first thrust punched clean through a leather shield and straight through the warrior behind it. The 3-sided blade left a wound that gushed blood with no way to stop it. Freya was doing the same on her side, tearing through armor like it was paper. The Blackhorn soldiers panicked completely, trapped in a tight space, hit from above and both sides with weapons that cut through their armor like nothing. They had no chance. Some tried to fight, most just tried to run. There was nowhere to go. It was over in less than 10 minutes. Over 200 enemy dead, scattered across the canyon floor, in pools of blood. On our side, a few minor injuries. 0 deaths. A perfect ambush. Freya stood among the bodies, her red hair stained darker with blood, staring at me with an expression I hadn't seen from her before. Complete, unconditional belief. Then a scout came sprinting down from a lookout peak, face white with panic. The Blackhorn main force had discovered what happened to their vanguard. Their chief, Savage Mane, was furious. He'd abandoned his supply wagons and was charging toward us at full speed with every soldier he had. The final battle was coming, much sooner than I'd planned. 3,000 Blackhorn warriors spread across the plain like a black flood. Their chief, Savage Mane, was built like a mountain, shirtless, covered in scars and tattoos, swinging a massive spiked club. He shouted disgusting things about Luna and Freya, saying he'd take them as prizes after killing us all. He demanded my head. I stood at the front in golden armor, calm as ever. But me, standing there wasn't actually me. It was a decoy wearing my gear. My real plan was already in motion. I'd spent every last piece of our refined steel to build armor and heavy lances for 50 of our best warriors. The first crude version of heavy cavalry. Luna, Freya, and I were hidden with them behind a hill, waiting. The battle began. I'd ordered our main force to fight in small, flexible squads and then slowly retreat toward the flanks, leaving the center wide open. The horseshoe advantage helped them move faster and more steadily across the uneven ground. But we were still outnumbered 3-1, and the pressure was enormous. Our lines bent and buckled. The Blackhorn warriors thought we were collapsing. They got excited, chased harder, and their formation stretched thin and sloppy. Exactly what I wanted. Savage Mane himself charged straight at my decoy, smashing through everything in his path, thinking he was about to end the war. That's when I gave the signal. A war horn sounded from the hillside. 50 heavy cavalry appeared on the ridge, steel chest plates flashing in the sun, long lances raised like a forest of iron. I was at the front, the real me this time. We charged downhill straight into the stretched, messy middle of their army. It was devastation. Their leather armor meant nothing against our steel lances at full speed. We punched through their entire formation like a hot blade through wax, splitting their army in two. Meanwhile, our flanking forces came screaming back out of the trees and surrounded the broken halves. In 1 minute, the battle had completely flipped. Savage Mane went berserk. He abandoned any strategy and charged straight at me, screaming that he'd kill me and do horrible things to my wives. I handed my lance to Luna and met him with bare fists. He swung his massive spiked club down with everything he had. I punched upward with a golden fist and knocked the weapon straight into the sky. His hand split open, and the bones in his arm shattered from the impact. Before he could even process what happened, I slid in close and cut his throat with a hand blade glowing with golden energy. His head flew off. His enormous headless body crashed to the ground. I grabbed the head, raised it high, and roared across the battlefield. Savage Mane is dead. Surrender and live. One enemy soldier dropped his weapon and knelt. Then another. Then dozens. Then hundreds. Within moments, the entire Blackhorn army was on its knees. Our warriors erupted in cheers. The war was over. I looked out at the thousands of surrendered soldiers and the massive Blackhorn camp in the distance. Absorbing this many people would be a huge challenge. Then the system chimed in. It had scanned the spoils and found a high-value target, Savage Mane's daughter, a woman named Terra. She carried a rare Earth bloodline, had A-level potential, and held enormous influence within her tribe. The system suggested that taking her as a partner would let me absorb the entire Blackhorn tribe peacefully and unlock Earth-related powers and technologies. I looked toward the distant Blackhorn camp and smiled. Looks like my night was going to be busy. The sun was setting over the Blackhorn camp, painting everything red. My soldiers had surrounded the entire place, guarding thousands of prisoners. Inside the tents, tens of thousands of women, children, and elderly huddled in fear, waiting to learn their fate. I sat on Savage Mane's old throne and listened to reports. The Blackhorn tribe had 3 times our wealth in livestock, furs, and grain. Their weapons were junk compared to ours now. The real question was what to do with all these people. Absorbing a tribe bigger than our own was something no centaur had ever done. Then she walked in. Terra, Savage Mane's daughter. She had long black hair tied back, strong features, and a look of stubborn determination. Not the flashy beauty of Luna or Freya, but striking in her own way. She asked me straight, what would I do with her people? I told her the truth. Her people, her land, everything now belonged to me. She offered to make the Blackhorn tribe our vassals, paying tribute every year, if I'd let them keep their name and independence. I told her she had no position to bargain from, but I offered her a choice. Marry me, become my third queen, and her people would be treated as full citizens of my tribe, not slaves, not prisoners. She'd be the bridge between our two peoples. She refused instantly. Marry her father's killer? She'd rather die. I didn't back down. I told her it was happening tonight, and she could accept with dignity, or I'd let my soldiers handle things less gently. It was a brutal threat, and I meant every word of it. She broke. For her people's sake, she agreed with a single word that seemed to drain everything out of her. That night in the tent, she tried to kill me with a hidden dagger. I caught her wrist without even looking, squeezed until she dropped it. Too weak to hurt me, too proud to stop fighting. But I didn't force anything. Instead, I showed her two objects, a horseshoe and a steel ingot. I explained what each one could do for her people. Better hunting range, stronger weapons, fewer deaths. I told her that her father had been a fool who wasted his tribe's potential on looting, luxury, and war. Everything I said was true, and she knew it. She just couldn't admit it. I told her that hatred was the cheapest, most useless thing in the world. It wouldn't feed her people or make them stronger. I painted her a picture of a future where all centaurs stood united in a kingdom powerful enough that no human empire or rival race could push us around. Then I left her alone for the night to decide. The next morning, I found her kneeling, forehead to the ground. The hatred in her eyes was gone, replaced by something clear and resolved. I offer you everything, my loyalty and myself. Just treat my people well. The system confirmed it. She'd submitted with high loyalty. My rewards came flooding in. Earth-type energy affinity, a boost to my physical and mental stats, plus blueprints for irrigation channels and basic fortifications, wooden walls, and arrow towers. I helped her to her feet and told her she was now my third queen. Her people were now my people. 3 queens. 2 tribes merged into one. And I was just getting started. After absorbing the Blackhorn tribe, our territory and population tripled overnight. But I didn't rush into more conquests. It was time to build. With Terra's help, the former Blackhorn people accepted my rule surprisingly fast. The moment they got horseshoes and steel weapons, all their doubts disappeared. The irrigation blueprints and fortification plans I'd unlocked made the tribe explode with excitement. Terra had a natural ability to sense the earth, which made planning the water channels much easier. For the first time, our people didn't have to travel long distances just for drinking water. Wooden walls and arrow towers started going up around the settlement. What had been a collection of tents was starting to look like an actual city. But the thing everyone was really waiting for was Luna's baby. She was enormous. Both her human belly and her horse body sides had swelled up. She still carried herself with dignity, every step slow and steady. The whole tribe watched her with awe, wondering what kind of child the Golden King and the moon-blooded queen would produce. The day finally came. I rushed back to the royal tent after finishing my work and heard Luna's muffled cries of pain inside. Freya was pacing outside like a caged animal, too restless to stand still. Terra held my hand and told me everything would be fine. Hours passed. Then something impossible happened. The clear sky went dark. In the west, a silver crescent moon rose early, glowing with soft light. In the east, the sunset didn't fade. It gathered into a blaze of gold. The 2 lights stretched across the sky and met directly above our tent, forming a swirling vortex of gold and silver. Every centaur in the tribe fell to their knees, calling it a miracle from the ancestors. Then I heard it, one loud, powerful cry. And almost immediately, a second one, softer and sweeter. The midwife burst out of the tent, barely able to speak through her excitement. Twins. A prince and a princess. I charged inside. Luna lay there drenched in sweat, pale but glowing with happiness. In her arms were 2 tiny bundles wrapped in soft animal skins. The boy had golden hair, bright as sunlight. He was waving his little fists and screaming with lungs that could wake the dead. I could feel it immediately. His blood was the same as mine, pure Golden Centaur lineage. The girl had silver hair like moonlight made solid. Her eyes, barely open, were pure silver, as if they held an entire night sky. A gentle energy hummed around her, the same kind as Luna's moon bloodline, but somehow stronger. I touched their faces with trembling hands. The feeling of being connected to them through blood was something I'd never experienced before. I kissed Luna's sweaty forehead and told her she'd done incredible work. She smiled weakly. They look like you. The system went absolutely wild. Both children were rated S-level potential. The boy inherited my golden bloodline. The girl inherited Luna's moon stallion bloodline with mutations from my influence. The overall rating: perfect birth, epic level rewards. The rewards were staggering. My battle energy jumped from early second level to peak second level, just one step from third. My physical stats shot up by 20 points each. Each child gave me a permanent bonus. The boy added 5% to my strength, the girl 5% to my speed. For the tribe, I unlocked blueprints for a fountain of life, a building that could slowly heal the sick, purify water, and occasionally give newborns special talents. I also got a training manual for a new unit type, light cavalry archers equipped with composite bows and curved swords, perfect for scouting and harassment. And as a bonus for the twin birth, I received basic farming techniques so we could start growing drought-resistant crops. I finally understood how terrifying the system truly was. 1A partner with the twin ability, and a single birth had completely transformed me and my tribe. I couldn't help glancing outside at Freya and Terra, both of whom were already showing pregnancies of their own. One carried fire in her blood, the other carried earth. What would their children bring? The twin birth and the sun and moon miracle in the sky pushed my reputation to godlike status. Nobody questioned me anymore. I was the living ancestor in their eyes. I immediately started building the life spring from the blueprints I'd unlocked. Hundreds of workers hauled white stone and carved golden symbols into the foundation, with Terra using her earth-sensing ability to guide the construction. The whole tribe gathered daily to watch, buzzing with rumors about magical healing water. But one person wasn't impressed. Shalon, our chief healer, a quiet, intellectual woman with flax-colored hair and braids and crude crystal glasses on her face. Her family had passed down herbal medicine knowledge for generations. She believed in plants and proven remedies, not miracles. She watched the construction with polite skepticism. Then her own body betrayed her. A chronic disease she called withering vine sickness had been eating away at her lungs for years. She tried every remedy her family knew. Nothing worked. She could only slow it down. This time, the attack hit harder than ever. She collapsed, barely breathing, her strength draining away fast. I happened to be nearby. I scooped her up and carried her straight to the life spring, which had just been finished but hadn't been officially opened yet. The crowd thought I was crazy, putting a sick woman in cold water. The moment her body touched the spring, the whole pool lit up. Golden symbols on the bottom blazed to life, and waves of healing energy poured into her. The disease that had tortured her for years dissolved like snow in sunlight. Color rushed back to her face. Her dull hair started glowing faintly green with life energy. Something new was awakening inside her too, an ability to connect with plants and living things at a deeper level. When I lifted her out, she was completely healed. Better than healed. She felt stronger than she'd ever been in her life. She took off her glasses, revealing striking green eyes, knelt before me, and pressed her forehead to my hoof. She pledged everything she had, her knowledge, her skills, her life, to me. In her eyes I saw gratitude, awe, and something softer she probably hadn't recognized yet. The system flagged her immediately. A-level potential, maximum loyalty. A hidden quest triggered. Make her my partner and unlock advanced herbal medicine knowledge plus blueprints for a medicinal herb garden. I told her I wanted more than a chief healer. I wanted her to be the holy priestess of the life spring, guardian of the tribe's health. Then I carried her to the royal tent. That night, the system poured an entire encyclopedia of advanced herbal medicine into my brain, hundreds of rare plants, recipes, and preparation methods. Even more interesting, the system detected a trace of ancient elf blood in Shalon's body, too faint to activate on its own, but real. It suggested that making contact with the elves in the Black Forest might unlock a way to awaken it. As if on cue, a scout came running in with urgent news. Our farthest outpost had detected powerful magical energy surging from deep inside the Black Forest. Something big was happening in there. For Queens now, a growing kingdom, new technologies spreading across the tribe, and the Black Forest, home to elves, was calling. With the life spring running and Shalon on my side, the tribe was healthier and more united than ever. Newborns were stronger, injuries healed faster, and morale was sky high. I didn't let anyone relax. At my twins' 1-month celebration, I announced a complete military restructuring in front of every leader in the tribe. No more Windhoof soldiers and Blackhorn soldiers. From now on, there would be one unified army of 3,000, split into 3 branches. 1,000 light cavalry scouts with leather armor, curved swords, and composite bows. They'd be my eyes and claws. 1,000 heavy lance cavalry in steel chest plates with 3-meter spears, my battering ram. And 1,000 mounted archers for ranged support, the force that tips any battle. The crowd got excited fast, but then the fighting started. A Windhoof captain insisted his men deserved the elite heavy cavalry slots. A Blackhorn officer pushed back, saying his warriors were just as tough. Freya slammed the table and told the Blackhorn men to shut up. They'd lost the war, so they didn't get to complain. That comment cut deep. Every former Blackhorn soldier went quiet, heads down. Tara clenched her fists but couldn't argue. The fragile unity between the two tribes was cracking open again. I'd expected this. I wanted it out in the open. I announced a solution, a full army tournament in 3 days. Every officer position, from squad leader to division commander, would be decided by combat and tactical skill. No favoritism, no politics. Former tribe didn't matter. Only strength and ability. The Windhoof warriors were stunned. They'd assumed the top jobs were theirs automatically. The Blackhorn soldiers lifted their heads for the first time, eyes burning with renewed hope. A fair chance was all they needed. The tournament was intense. An unknown Blackhorn veteran beat a top Windhoof fighter with simple, clean technique. A squad of former prisoners outsmarted a well-equipped heavy cavalry team using superior knowledge of terrain. The biggest shock came in the finals for heavy cavalry commander. Everyone expected Freya to win. Her opponent was Tara. Since absorbing the Earth-type energy I'd helped her unlock, Tara had become an immovable fortress. Her defense was airtight. Her counterattacks hit like landslides. Freya attacked with everything she had, wild, blazing, relentless, but couldn't break through. Tara wore her down patiently, then caught a tiny opening and put her spear at Freya's throat. Freya stared at the blade, then at Tara's calm face. She was speechless, but she accepted it completely. I announced the results from the high platform. Tara would command the heavy cavalry. Freya would lead the mounted archers. A former Blackhorn centurion named Barton got the light cavalry scouts. Over 40% of officer positions went to former Blackhorn soldiers who'd earned them fair and square. Nobody complained. The old prejudices melted away when everyone saw that rank came from ability, not background. The two tribes finally started feeling like one people. My army was forged, loyal only to me, bound by merit, and hungry to prove itself. Right as the celebrations peaked, a blood-covered scout staggered into camp and dropped to one knee. King, the Black Forest, something's happening. A massive orc army, at least 5,000 strong, is attacking a camp at the edge of the forest. The camp is protected by some kind of golden barrier, but it's about to collapse. Inside, I think they're elves. The system had just told me that contact with forest elves might awaken Shalon's dormant ancient bloodline. It seemed the Black Forest wasn't just calling, it was screaming for help. The word, elves, sent a shockwave through my council. Elves were creatures of legend, beautiful, powerful, masters of magic. Nobody in the tribe had ever seen one. And orcs were every grassland race's worst nightmare. Savage, bloodthirsty, and always coming in overwhelming numbers. 5,000 orcs besieging a dying elven outpost. The golden barrier protecting it had maybe 2 days left. Freya jumped up immediately, demanding we march. She was still stinging from losing to Tara in the tournament and wanted a real fight. She started saying something about elven women before catching the looks from Luna and Shalon, then quickly switched to talking about elven magic and craftsmanship being valuable allies. But Tara stepped forward and said no. Her argument was solid. We'd just merged two tribes. Our people were still adjusting, resources were stretched thin. 5,000 orcs was nearly double our force. Even if we won, we'd be gutted. Why risk everything we'd built for strangers who might not even be grateful? Her words hit hard, especially with the former Blackhorn soldiers who'd already survived one near extinction. The room split, Freya's war faction against Terra's cautious faction. Everyone looked at me. I didn't answer right away. I took my 4 queens into the private chamber and laid out a map. I listened to each of them. Luna would follow me anywhere. Freya grudgingly admitted Terra had a point. Shallan said resting was safer and noted that elves were famously arrogant. Terra repeated that she didn't want our people to suffer again. Her voice trembled when she said it. I told them Terra was right about everything she could see, but she was looking at the wrong scale. I pointed at our position on the map and asked them why centaurs had spent thousands of years scraping by on barren grassland, fighting each other over winter food, living in fear of human empires. Because we were small and divided. Steel weapons and horseshoes could make us a stronger tribe, but against a real empire with mage armies and fleets, we'd still be an ant, just a slightly tougher one. What I wanted wasn't a bigger tribe. I wanted a kingdom that could stand equal to human empires. A nation where every centaur could live with dignity. To build that, we needed allies. And the elves, ancient, magical, sophisticated, were the best possible partners we could ever find. Saving them wasn't charity. It was an investment in our entire race's future. And the window was closing fast. As for the orcs, they'd make a perfect whetstone for our new army, and a perfect announcement to the continent that the Windhoof Kingdom had arrived. I watched the change happen in their eyes. Terra stared at me for a long time, then knelt. She finally understood the gap between us. She was thinking about survival. I was thinking about legacy. She volunteered to lead the heavy cavalry charge personally. Freya and Shallan knelt beside her. All 4 queens, fully united. When we walked back out together, the entire room could feel the decision had been made. I gave the order. Full army, assemble. Target. The Black Forest. 3,000 warriors roared as one. Half a day later, we marched out, a steel river of soldiers in new armor, carrying sharp blades, long lances, and composite bows. Hundreds of banners bearing the golden sacred hoof emblem snapped in the wind. This wasn't a tribal war party anymore. This was a kingdom's army, marching under a single flag for the first time. We were heading into the unknown. But whatever waited in that forest, orcs, elves, or something worse, we were ready. The Black Forest lived up to its name. Massive ancient trees blocked out the sky. The ground was covered in rotting leaves and tangled roots, and the air was thick with dampness. For centaurs used to open grassland, it felt like walking into a cage. Freya was cursing constantly, swatting away vines, and complaining she couldn't even swing her axe. Her warriors felt the same, born chargers trapped in a space where charging was impossible. I noticed her glaring at me riding on Luna's back in human form, but I had bigger things to worry about. I ordered the army to slow down, spread scouts at 10-meter intervals, and advance with rotating cover. The new training showed. My soldiers moved through the forest like professionals, not the disorganized mob they would have been weeks ago. An orc scout tried to shoot me from a treetop. Before the poisoned arrow reached me, one of my light cavalry archers shot it out of the air, called out the position, and dropped the sniper with a follow-up shot. 2 dead orcs hit the ground. I didn't even flinch. Clean it up, was all I said. After half a day of grinding through dense forest, we crested a ridge, and every warrior behind me went silent. Below us was a nightmare. A massive clearing had been carved out of the forest. In the center, a golden magical barrier shaped like an upside-down bowl protected a cluster of elegant white buildings. But the barrier was barely holding, covered in black cracks, flickering, almost transparent. Inside, I could see elves. They were wounded, exhausted, fighting desperately behind their crumbling buildings. Outside the barrier, thousands of orcs swarmed like a green sea. Endless camps circled the elven position. Wave after wave of orc warriors battered the shield. Farther back, dozens of hunched shaman priests danced around a dark altar, shooting streams of sickly green energy that corroded the barrier with every pulse. Terra's voice was tight. That's more than 5,000. Freya wanted to charge straight down. Terra said that was suicide. We couldn't form ranks on the ridge, and getting tangled in twice our number of orcs in tight terrain would destroy us. They started arguing again. I told them both to be quiet. I slid off Luna's back, found a flat rock, and sketched out a battle plan with a stick. Three-pronged attack. Freya would take 500 warriors and 1,000 archers down the left flank in a loud, flashy diversionary assault. Draw as many orc eyes as possible. Terra would take 1,000 light cavalry through the dense forest on the right, hit the orc supply camp from behind, set fires, create chaos, then pull back without getting stuck. Neither of them was the main attack. Luna asked what her heavy cavalry would do. I pointed at the cliff face in the center, the spot the orcs considered their safest, most protected position, and told her we were going straight through it. 52 of us. Me, her, and our 50 best heavy cavalry. We'd punch through everything between us and the shaman altar, then kill the orc commander. Not a battle of attrition, a decapitation strike. Everyone stared at me like I'd lost my mind. 52 riders into the heart of thousands? I cut off the first officer who tried to object. I shifted back into my Golden Centaur form and raised my lance toward the orc army below. This battle will make the Windhoof Kingdom's name known. Follow me. We're taking their general's head. The war horn sounded. Freya's force poured down the left like a red flood, arrows darkening the sky. The orcs scrambled to respond, pulling forces toward the attack. Then Terra's riders ghosted out of the right side forest and torched the orc supply camp. Smoke and fire erupted behind enemy lines. Total confusion. While every orc was looking left and right, nobody was watching the center cliff. I gave the signal. 50 steel-armored heavy cavalry followed me off that near-vertical cliff face. It wasn't a charge, it was divine punishment falling from the sky. Our hooves hit rock like thunder. We smashed through everything in our path. Elite berserkers, giant war wolves, it didn't matter. The steel lances and three-sided bayonets tore through them like they were made of paper. We drove a straight line through layer after layer of orc defenders, heading for the shaman altar. A massive orc warlord, over 3 meters tall, carrying a blood-stained battle axe, stood in our way. He roared at his soldiers to stop us. I didn't even use a weapon. He swung his axe with enough force to split a boulder. I caught it with my bare hand. The steel axe shattered on contact. My fist kept going, punching clean through his chest. He looked down at the golden arms sticking through his body. Then the light left his eyes. I pulled my arm free and let him fall. The command flag was down. The general was dead. The shamans around the altar stared at me in shock. But in the distance, war horns from the orc main camp were just starting to blow. The real fight wasn't over yet. Inside the golden barrier, every elf stopped what they were doing and stared at us. I could see the shock on their faces. In their minds, centaurs were primitive savages fighting over grass and water at the bottom of civilization's ladder. What they were watching didn't match that picture at all. Disciplined soldiers in matching steel armor, executing complex tactics, led by a golden centaur who just punched through their tormentor's chest with his bare fist. But I didn't have time to enjoy their surprise. Killing the orc commander had been the easy part. Now his entire army was furious and closing in on my 52 riders from every direction. Luna was fighting beside me, her spear never missing, but there were simply too many. Freya and Terra's forces were pinned down on the flanks, unable to break through to help us. We were surrounded, deep inside enemy territory with no backup coming. I wasn't worried. This was exactly the kind of pressure I needed. I poured golden battle energy into my voice and shouted straight at the elves behind their crumbling shield. I am Qin Hao, King of the Windhoof. Your enemy's commander is dead. Their army is in chaos. Open a gap in your barrier and hit them from behind. Together we crush them. Or stay in your shell and wait for us to fall, then die slowly when they turn back to you. Your choice. No polite request. No begging. Just the raw truth. Inside the barrier, the elves erupted in argument. Some elders screamed it was a trap. Young officers said it was their only chance. Others insisted centaurs were no better than orcs. Then a voice cut through all of it. Calm, clear, final. Listen to him. A woman stepped out from beneath a massive ancient tree at the center of the outpost. Silver hair like a waterfall, eyes like a sky full of stars, wearing a white ceremonial robe. She was the moon elf saintess, Aurora. She walked to the barrier's edge, pressed her pale hand against it, and commanded the shield to open. A gap wide enough for 10 soldiers melted into existence. A one-armed elf veteran roared a battle cry and charged out first. 700 combat-ready elves followed, pouring through the opening like arrows from a bow. Some carried curved blades and moved like wind. Others drew longbows that fired arrows glowing with magic. They slammed into the flank of the orc force that had been trying to surround me. Suddenly, the orcs were caught between two armies. I laughed out loud and gave the order for the full attack. Freya stopped pretending and launched a real charge. Terra's light cavalry switched from harassment to hunting, chasing down scattered groups like wolves. The battle flipped completely. Our heavy cavalry kept smashing through orc formations, splitting them into helpless fragments. Elf archers picked off orc officers with pinpoint accuracy from elevated positions. Centaur power and elven precision worked together in a strange, beautiful kind of violence. The orcs broke completely. They threw down their weapons and ran screaming into the deep forest. I let them go. Chasing a broken enemy into unknown territory wasn't worth the risk. When the last orc disappeared into the trees, silence returned. The air was thick with blood and exhaustion. My soldiers started cleaning the battlefield efficiently, collecting weapons, treating wounded, counting losses. The surviving elves just stood there watching us, their expressions a complicated mix of gratitude, shock, curiosity, and wariness. I shifted back to human form. My armor was covered in blood, but I stood tall as the elves approached. Their leader was Aurora. Up close, she was beyond anything I'd ever seen. Skin white as moonlit snow, features so perfect they looked sculpted, and those star-filled eyes that seemed to see straight through you. She carried herself with a natural grace that made it clear this was a being from a completely different world than mine. The system confirmed what my eyes already told me. Star bloodline, a purity. S-level personal potential. Beauty rating, 98. The highest value target I'd ever encountered, by far. She stopped in front of me, gave an elegant elven bow, and spoke in a voice like clear water running over stones. I am Aurora of the Star Voice, saintess of this moon elf outpost. On behalf of all survivors, I thank you for your aid, powerful and unknown king. We owe you our lives. Windhoof Kingdom. Qin Hao. I kept it short and confident. Aurora raised an eyebrow at the word, kingdom. She'd never heard of centaurs having one. I told her it was new, but destined to be great. Then I shifted the conversation away from gratitude and toward what I actually came for, an alliance. Orcs were everyone's enemy, and today was just the beginning. That's when the trouble started. An old elf druid named Lolan stepped forward with pure contempt dripping from every word. He basically said centaurs were savages who had no right to speak to children of the stars as equals. Freya exploded. She shoved her way forward, calling him a bean-sprout-shaped pointy ear and threatening to chop him in half for firewood. Every elf in earshot wrinkled their nose in disgust, which only proved Lolan's point in their minds. Freya, stand down. I said it quietly but firmly. She spun around looking betrayed. She'd been defending my honor, defending our kingdom, and I was shutting her down in front of these arrogant elves. I put my hand on her arm, gently, but with enough strength that she couldn't move. I could see the hurt in her eyes. She thought I was going soft to impress these elegant strangers. She bit her lip and stepped back, chest heaving with frustration. I let it go. Fighting insults with insults would get me nowhere. I told Lolan that actions speak louder than words. Right on cue, elf medics rushed in carrying a dying captain on a stretcher. He'd been hit by an orc shaman's withering curse during the siege, a death sentence. Lolan tried his druid healing magic, but the green light dissolved the instant it touched the black curse marks. He shook his head sadly. Nothing could save him. I stepped forward. Maybe this savage has something that works. Shalon handed me a crystal bottle filled with water from our life spring. Lolan sneered. A bottle of plain water against a deep curse? Ridiculous. I ignored him, pulled the stopper, and dripped a few drops into the dying elf's mouth. The reaction was instant and violent. Pure life energy erupted from his body in a wave of green light. The black curse marks burned away like ice under a blowtorch. His gray face flushed with color. His breathing went from a death rattle to strong and steady. His eyes opened. I'm alive? He sat up, looking healthier than he probably had in days. Dead silence. Every elf stood frozen with their mouths hanging open, including Lolan, whose face cycled through about 15 shades of red and white. He'd just pronounced this man dead, and I'd brought him back with a few drops of ordinary water. Aurora's reaction interested me most. For the first time, real shock broke through her composure. She stared at the bottle, then at me, breathing faster. I could tell she recognized what the water contained, the same kind of primal life force as the ancient tree her people guarded, maybe even purer. I looked at her and smiled. So, Saintess, are we qualified to discuss an alliance now? I could see everything shift behind those star-filled eyes. I wasn't a lucky brute anymore. I was a mysterious king holding miracles in a bottle. What I also noticed, and what the system helpfully flagged, was Freya watching from the sideline. She saw the way Aurora looked at me, not with the crude desire of a battlefield romance, but with the intellectual fascination of someone meeting her equal. That kind of admiration was something Freya had never dealt with before. She could compete with anyone using an axe, but she had no idea how to compete with elegance and wisdom. For the first time ever, I saw jealousy flicker across her fearless face. The system chimed in with a new quest chain. First step, earn Aurora's trust and sign a formal military alliance. The rewards were enormous. Access to elven technology, a nature affinity talent for me, and blueprints for a moonwell building for the tribe. The game with the elves was just beginning, and I was playing with very strong cards. Back in our camp, I had to deal with Freya first. She was furious, eyes burning, chest heaving, ready to explode. She couldn't understand why I'd silenced her when that elf druid insulted our entire race. And watching Aurora look at me with admiration had twisted something inside her that she'd never felt before. I didn't explain myself with words. I walked up, grabbed her, and threw her over my shoulder despite her kicking and cursing. I pinned her down on the furs and told her straight, "Nobody insults my queen and gets away with it. But I'd handle it my way on my terms." That old druid and every elf who looked down on her would end up begging for her forgiveness. But that was my business to arrange. Then I kissed her before she could argue anymore. After some thorough comforting, she was curled up against me like a satisfied cat, all the jealousy and anger gone. With that settled, I finalized plans with Aurora. I'd travel with her to the elven capital, Moonsong Grove, to meet the Elder Council and negotiate a formal alliance. I brought Freya, Terra, and Shalon, plus 200 of my best soldiers as an escort. The deeper forest was miserable for centaurs. Thick roots, mud, tangled undergrowth, everything worked against us. Terra could feel it through her earth sense. The ground itself seemed hostile, pulsing with corrupted energy. Then we were ambushed. A dozen armored magic wolves burst from the trees, massive beasts covered in green shell-like plating, with red eyes and acid spit. They were nothing like regular animals. Our lances couldn't pierce their shells easily, and one warrior got his arm melted by acid spray. Even the elf rangers were struggling. I shifted into my golden form and tried something new. Instead of fighting, I reached for the divine power deep in my bloodline. The system confirmed it. An ability called Life Sovereignty had activated, a pressure born from divine blood that could intimidate corrupted creatures, purify dark energy, and calm natural beings. I raised my hand and released it fully. A warm, holy wave of energy poured out from me. The grass around my hooves grew greener. The agitated trees calmed down. The foul air cleared. And the wolves, the dark energy driving them was burned away. Their red eyes faded to confused animal eyes. They whimpered, tucked their tails, and slunk back into the forest. I'd ended the fight without throwing a single blow. My warriors stared in awe. But the elves' reaction went deeper. Lolan the druid dropped his staff, his face white. As a nature magic practitioner, he could sense exactly what I'd done, and it wasn't borrowing nature's power like he did. It was commanding it, a force purer and more primal than anything in his training. Something close to a god's authority over life itself. Aurora's eyes shimmered. I could tell that in her mind, my image was beginning to overlap with the ancient nature gods from her people's oldest legends. We reached Moonsong Grove safely. It was breathtaking, a city built on the branches of enormous ancient trees, connected by vine bridges, decorated with glowing magic lanterns. Like something from a fairy tale. But the welcome was cold. The Elder Council demanded I pass a trial before any alliance could be signed. A test called the Trial of the Natural Child, meant to prove my heart was as pure as my power. Aurora warned me it would project my deepest fears and try to break my spirit. I stepped into the ritual circle without hesitation. The visions hit immediately. I saw the Wind Hoof tribe burning, Terra killed by rebellious soldiers, Freya impaled by spears while protecting me, Luna and my twins lying in pools of blood. Then a darker future, my kingdom grown huge, only to be annihilated by a human empire's siege weapons and griffin cavalry. Everything I'd built, reduced to ash. A seductive voice whispered that my ambition would only bring destruction. I stood in a sea of corpses and blood, looked at all of it, and shook my head. I define my own future. I protect my own family. I didn't use battle energy or weapons. I just opened my heart completely, let out every ounce of love and responsibility I felt for my people, my wives, my children. My golden bloodline resonated with that willpower, and a pure, holy golden light erupted from my chest. Every nightmare, every horror, every whisper dissolved like frost in sunlight. Outside the circle, the elves watched blinding golden light explode from the trial ground. Light so sacred that even they, the children of the stars, felt the urge to kneel. When it faded, I was standing calmly in the center as if I'd just taken a pleasant walk. The elders were speechless. Their trial was designed to test mortal heroes. What I'd shown was closer to a god's mind. Aurora rushed forward, all doubt gone from her starlit eyes. Only deep admiration remained. Windhoof King, Moonsong Grove, and all the elves of the Silver Moon Forest welcome you, our most honored ally. But before I could respond, her expression darkened with worry. She turned and pointed to the massive ancient tree at the heart of the city, the one that should have been bursting with life. Our mother, the World Tree, Idathiel, is dying. When Aurora pointed at the World Tree, I finally looked at it closely. It was enormous, so massive I'd been too awed by its size to notice the details. But now I could see it. The leaves were turning sickly yellow and curling at the edges. The ancient bark was cracked and dry like an old man's skin. And creeping up from the roots was a faint smell of rot. The same corruption I'd sensed on those armored wolves. Shalon gasped. As a healer, she could feel the trees suffering more than anyone. Aurora told us the truth. 100 years ago, the elves first noticed leaves dying. They thought it was natural, but it kept getting worse. And because elven births were tied to the World Tree's life force, not a single baby had been born in their settlement for a century. Their race was slowly going extinct. Lolan the Druid had lost all his arrogance now. He looked broken, admitting they'd tried everything. Moonlight essence, Druid life magic, ancient prayer rituals. Nothing worked. Freya and Terra exchanged heavy looks. No new children for 100 years, for anyone who valued survival. That was a death sentence in slow motion. I quietly asked the system to scan the tree. The results came back clear. The World Tree wasn't sick. It was being poisoned. Something called abyssal shadow. Energy was crawling up through its roots from deep underground, eating away at its life force. Regular healing was useless. It was like feeding someone who was bleeding out. The poison would just corrupt any new energy pumped in. The system suggested two solutions: find and destroy the source, or use a higher-level holy power to purify and repair the damage. Shalon volunteered to examine the roots up close. Aurora hesitated. The root area was sacred ground, and also the most dangerous zone, but agreed. We descended to the bottom of the city on magical leaf elevators. Down there, the air was thick with decay. The World Tree's roots were as wide as mountain ridges, but covered in disgusting black slime that squirmed like something alive. Some sections had turned completely to charcoal, crumbling at the lightest touch. Then one of the roots suddenly cracked open and sprayed a jet of that black slime straight at Shalon. Freya and Terra both tried to block it, but the stuff passed right through their battle energy like it wasn't there. I moved faster than all of them. I appeared in front of Shalon and held out my palm. The black slime hit an invisible wall of golden energy about a foot from my hand, sizzling and screeching, then evaporated into smoke. The system confirmed my holy bloodline did 150% damage against this type of corruption. I was its natural enemy. Lolan was muttering about ancient gods. Aurora was looking at me like she was seeing a divine being walking the earth. I steadied Shalon and asked what she'd found. She'd used her life magic to probe the roots, and her diagnosis matched the system perfectly. The tree was being poisoned from deep underground. A terrible toxin designed specifically to devour life force was being fed up through the root system continuously. She said she could temporarily cleanse a small portion if I acted as the energy core. My holy power was the only thing pure enough to guide the process. The elf elders looked skeptical about a centaur treating their sacred tree, but Aurora cut them off before they could object. We follow the Wind Hoof King's lead. Shalon poured her entire bottle of life spring water into her hands and began chanting an ancient healing song. A dense sphere of green light formed in her palms. I placed my hand over hers, channeling my golden holy energy into the sphere. It erupted with power, green laced with golden veins, glowing with sacred intensity. She pressed the combined sphere against the world tree's main root. The effect was immediate and stunning. A wave of green-gold light rippled up through the roots. Wherever it passed, the black slime screamed and dissolved. Cracked bark regained its living color. And at the tip of a half-dead branch high above us, something incredible happened. A tiny bright green bud pushed its way out into the light. The first new growth in 100 years. The world tree seemed to sigh with relief. Most of the decay was still there. We'd only treated a fraction. But that single green bud was like the first ray of dawn after the longest night. A young elf ranger fell to his knees weeping. Then dozens more followed, looking at me and Shalon with tears streaming down their faces. Lolan walked up to me trembling, tears on his old cheeks. He bowed deeply. The same man who'd called us savages just hours ago. Windhoof King, please, save us. The system confirmed I'd completed the second stage of the Alliance quest chain, unlocking basic elven technology and blueprints for a moonwell. But a new main quest had also appeared. The corruption source was located in a forgotten ancient ruin deep in the Black Forest, now occupied by powerful dark creatures. I helped Lolan to his feet, but my eyes were already looking past him, deeper into the forest. Treating symptoms won't cure the disease. To save your tree, and to protect my own people, I need to go to the source of this poison and destroy it myself. I decided to go to the source of the corruption, a place the elves called the Forbidden Ruins, deep in the Black Forest. Lolan, who'd gone from hating me to practically worshipping me, begged me not to go. He said the ruins held a crack into the abyss itself, and every hero who'd ever tried to cleanse it had never come back. Aurora's eyes were full of worry too, and her concern felt genuine, which naturally made Freya mutter something about fake pointy ears under her breath. I told them all the same thing. As long as that corruption existed underground, it would keep attracting more orcs, more monsters, and eventually threaten my kingdom too. I wasn't going to wait for the problem to come to me. I left Terra and Shalon behind to keep treating the world tree and start building the moonwell. I took Freya and 50 of my best heavy cavalry. Freya was thrilled. Fighting alongside me and leaving Aurora far behind was exactly what she wanted. The night before we left, I visited Shalon in her tent. She'd been working herself ragged studying elven texts by lamplight. I held her and told her she'd earned some personal attention from her king. Things were just getting started when Terra burst in, furious and jealous, demanding to know why I was with someone else while she'd been lying. Awake worrying about me. Instead of letting go of Shalon, I pulled Terra in too and told them both they were getting my full attention tonight. Let's just say the royal tent didn't go quiet until dawn. Freya was on guard duty outside and heard everything. She spent the whole night red-faced and stabbing training spears into the dirt. The next morning, our squad headed deeper into the forest. The closer we got to the ruins, the worse everything became. Trees twisted into nightmare shapes, the ground covered in stinking black fungus. No living creatures anywhere, not even wind. My warriors gripped their lances tight. Even Freya admitted her fire energy felt sluggish in this place. When we entered the ruins, a field of crumbling black stone pillars, they hit us. Dozens of dark creatures exploded from hiding. 8-legged spider things, skinless dogs, all wrapped in black mist with green fire in their eyes. Freya charged the nearest one and buried her axe in it with a blow that should have split an armored rhino in half. The creature flew backward, rolled twice, and got right back up. The wound was already healing. She couldn't believe it. Even worse, their claws and teeth corroded our steel armor on contact. One soldier's shield started dissolving where a spider had struck it. Then one of my men got bitten on the leg. His armor melted through in seconds, and the flesh underneath turned black and started dying. His scream made my decision for me. I stopped holding back. I unleashed everything. Golden holy light erupted from every inch of my body like a second sun. I raised my hand and formed a spear made entirely of condensed holy energy, burning with golden flames. I threw it into the center of the battlefield. The explosion of sacred light swept across the entire ruins. Every low-level creature it touched dissolved instantly. They didn't even have time to scream. The wounded soldiers' rotting flesh fell away and new skin started growing back in real time. But from deep inside the ruins, something roared back. A massive column of dark energy shot up from the ancient altar and formed a black wall that stopped my holy wave cold. Behind that shield, a dozen elite monsters survived, bigger, armored in bone plate. And stepping out from behind the altar came their general, a 5-meter-tall nightmare carrying an axe made of shadow and bones. Its power was at peak 3rd level, maybe touching 4th. That single attack had drained half my holy energy, and it had only cleared the small fry. But I wasn't backing down. Freya. Defensive formation, protect the wounded. These ones are mine. I charged alone. My golden hooves left burning imprints in the stone with every step. The demon general swung its shadow axe at me. I punched it barefisted. The collision sent shockwaves rippling outward, blasting rubble in every direction. Dark energy crawled up my arm, trying to invade my body, making my blood churn. But the creature staggered back, and I saw cracks in its bone armor. It came at me with its other claw. I didn't dodge. I shaped my left hand into a blade of concentrated holy light and sliced clean through its wrist. The hand dropped, spraying black blood. The creature went berserk, swinging its axe in a storm of death. I wove through the attacks like lightning, trading punches and holy blade strikes, gold and black energy exploding with every clash. I fought wild but precise, combining my raw physical power with the purifying force of holy light. I found an opening. I closed the distance and drove my burning golden fist straight into the general's chest. Holy judgment. The system confirmed I'd unlocked a new blood talent in the heat of battle. Holy energy poured into the creature's body and detonated from inside. The 5-meter monster exploded into burning golden fragments and dissolved into nothing. With the general dead, the remaining elites lost all coordination. I cut through them in seconds. The battlefield was finally clear. I was breathing hard. That last attack had taken almost everything I had. But my eyes were already locked on the deepest part of the ruins. The ancient black altar was still there, and at its center, a pulsing dark crystal throbbed like a diseased heart. Above it, something hidden in thick black fog was beginning to reveal its shape now that the general's power no longer shielded it. "Let's go see what's really hiding behind all this," I said, my voice calm despite my exhaustion. Freya watched me from behind the defensive line, her heart pounding. All her jealousy, all her pettiness about Aurora, it had evaporated completely. She was looking at a man who'd just soloed a demon army and was still walking forward. In that moment, she understood something with absolute clarity. Her king was one of a kind. No princess, no elf saintess. Nobody could ever stand equal to this son drenched in blood and fire. Everyone else, including her, was just starlight in comparison. My warriors stood frozen, staring at me. They'd been struggling against unkillable monsters just minutes ago, and I'd wiped the field clean single-handedly. Freya's eyes had lost every trace of rivalry or jealousy. Nothing left but raw, burning devotion. The elves watching from a distance were equally stunned. Lolan stammered that my final punch had exceeded 3rd-level power and touched the threshold of a 4th-level master. Aurora noted that my holy energy perfectly countered abyssal corruption, something only recorded in legends about the Holy Church's ancient saints. And yet I was a centaur. Their chatter gave me a clue I'd been missing. I asked the system to explain this world's power rankings, and it laid out the full picture. 10 levels for major realms. Levels 1 through 3 were the mortal realm, awakened warriors, elites, and commanders. 4 through 6 were the transcendent realm, masters, kings, and grandmasters who could fly and commanded serious power. 7 through 9 were the holy realm, legendary beings who could manipulate the laws of nature with near-divine strength. Level 10 was godhood itself, true immortality. I was at peak 3rd level. My holy judgment technique had hit with 4th-level force, which explained why the elves were so shocked. But the cost had been brutal. It drained half my holy energy in one shot. The real journey was just beginning. The holy realm was where I needed to aim. After a brief rest, we pushed deeper toward the black altar at the center of the ruins. The closer we got, the worse the air felt, cold, poisonous, pressing down on us. The altar was built from strange black stone covered in snake-like patterns. At its center sat a dark crystal the size of a barrel, pulsing like an evil heartbeat, sending out visible black ripples with every beat. This was the source of everything, the shield that had blocked my holy wave, the energy feeding the corruption into the world tree's roots. With the monster army destroyed, the thick fog above the crystal had started thinning. Something was hanging up there, suspended in midair. When we got close enough to see clearly, even I felt my stomach drop. It was a person, an elf. She was pierced through by dozens of black energy chains, hanging like a puppet. Her face was twisted in agony, her skin covered in dark magical markings. Parts of her body had turned to wood, warped and ugly, like the corrupted trees around us. The corruption poisoning the world tree was being pulled directly from her body, fed into the dark crystal below, and spread outward from there. She wasn't just a victim. She was the engine of destruction. Lolan nearly collapsed. He recognized the silver laurel crown in her hair. "That's Elaniel," he choked out. "Our greatest druid. She disappeared 300 years ago on a mission to purify these ruins." Aurora went white as a ghost. She didn't die fighting the darkness. She was captured and turned into the source of contamination. This was far worse than a monster invasion. This was a hero transformed into a weapon against her own people. Kept alive for centuries in endless torture, her life force twisted into poison. Then the thing that had been Elaniel opened its eyes. There was nothing elven left in them. No wisdom, no light. Just bottomless hatred, madness, and pure darkness. She screamed, a sound no living throat should make. The dark crystal beneath her flared to life, and a wave of black energy, several times more powerful than anything we'd faced, surged straight at us. I stepped forward and put myself between it and everyone else. "It seems," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the pressure, "this is a lot more complicated than we thought." The corrupted druid Elaniel unleashed a wave of dark energy far more powerful than anything the monster general had thrown at me. I stepped in front of everyone and raised a shield of golden holy light. The collision was brutal. My shield cracked almost instantly. I coughed up golden blood as the dark energy tried to worm its way into my body and soul. I had to stomp my feet into the stone floor just to keep from being pushed back. This corrupted elf was far stronger than the monster general I'd just killed. Freya screamed at me to destroy her. In Freya's eyes, it was simple. She wasn't an elf anymore. She was a threat, and threats get eliminated. Aurora cried out in protest. Elaniel was their greatest hero, missing for 300 years. She couldn't bear to see her killed. Lolan was falling apart too, mumbling about the world tree not giving up on its children. The Alliance was about to crack on its very first joint mission. My warrior queen wanted blood, my elf allies wanted mercy, and the monster in question was trying to kill all of us. I told everyone to shut up. Killing her would be the easiest solution. One punch and it's over. But I'd also destroy the trust I'd just built with the elves. And more than that, I sensed something the others couldn't see. I asked the system to scan her soul. The result came back, 99.1% corrupted. But there was still 0.9% fighting back. After 300 years of torture, a tiny spark of the real Elaniel was still resisting. Still alive. That changed everything. I ordered Freya to pull everyone back 50 steps and hold a defensive line. Nobody moves forward without my command. I didn't come here to slaughter heroes, I said, letting my broken shield dissolve and wrapping my entire body in golden light instead. I'm going to pull her out of the abyss. I formed a ball of golden energy in my palm. Not the violent, explosive holy judgment, but something gentler, purer, more precise. I wasn't going to burn the darkness and the host together. I was going to use my power like a surgeon's knife, cut through the layers of corruption, and reignite that dying spark of soul before it went out forever. This wasn't a confident gamble. This was a choice I had to make knowing the odds were terrible. Elaniel sensed what I was trying to do. She screamed louder than before, and the dark energy pillar twisted into the shape of a massive serpent, curving around my defenses to strike at my head from the side. a cunning, intelligent attack, not mindless rage. I didn't dodge. I planted my hooves, launched myself forward like a cannonball, and charged straight into the jaws of the shadow serpent. I charged straight into the dark energy blast. Everyone watching thought I'd lost my mind. At the last moment, I unleashed life's sovereignty, that divine pressure from my bloodline. It wasn't raw force, it was authority over life itself. The dark serpent of energy faltered like a snake meeting its natural predator, its violent while momentarily suppressed. I slipped past the weakened beam by a hair's width. The edges scorched my skin through the holy light, but I didn't care. Elenial fought back hard. The twisted trees around the altar came alive, sending hundreds of black-slimed thorny vines whipping at me from every direction. I let out a war cry infused with holy power, and the golden shockwave turned every vine to ash. I reached her. Up close, the horror was worse. Every inch of her skin was locked in a war between flesh and dark runes, parts of her body already turning to corrupted wood. I pressed my glowing palm against her forehead. The moment I made contact, a flood of cold, hateful consciousness tried to pour through my arm and drag my soul into the abyss. I fought it with pure willpower, forming a mental blade to slash at the invading darkness. At the same time, I threaded my holy energy carefully around the tangled corruption, searching for her soul. I found it, and with it came 300 years of memories. I saw a brave druid leading elite warriors against monsters pouring from a dimensional crack. I saw her sacrifice herself so her comrades could retreat. I saw something far worse lurking in the shadows, capturing her broken body before death could take her. Then came centuries of unimaginable torture, the abyss eating her. Well, bit by bit, turning her body into a pollution engine, forcing her to watch as the corruption she was generating destroyed the very forest she died to protect. But through all of it, I felt something incredible, a tiny thread of resistance that had never broken. 300 years adrift in an ocean of darkness, battered beyond recognition, and she still hadn't surrendered. That earned my absolute respect. I pushed harder, pouring more holy energy in. But the problem became clear fast. Her body, the dark crystal below, and the entire altar formed a closed loop. The crystal refilled her with darkness faster than I could purify it. My golden light was dimming. My face went white. Blood trickled from my mouth. I was being drained dry by this evil perpetual motion machine. From 50 steps back, Freya was watching me die in slow motion. Terra grabbed her arm, telling her that interfering would only distract me. But Aurora had a different idea. She raised her staff and began singing an ancient elven hymn of life and nature. Lolan joined in. A gentle green stream of natural energy flowed toward the altar. It couldn't fight the abyss, but it acted like a sedative, making Elenial's thrashing slow for just a moment. In that brief gap, the real Elenial managed to send me a broken thought. Kill. Me. Destroy. The crystal. She was asking me to end it. The simple solution. I refused. My vocabulary doesn't include give up. I made the craziest decision of my life. I stopped trying to purify the endless darkness. Instead, I compressed every drop of my remaining holy power and divine bloodline energy into a single point, a sacred wedge, and drove it straight into the core of her soul. I was using my own life force as kindling to reignite her dying spirit, trading my life for hers. I vomited golden blood. My body shook violently. My life force was plummeting. Freya snapped. To hell with your spiritual duel. My man is not dying. She erupted into a fireball and hurled herself bodily at the dark crystal like a human missile. Her attack was nothing compared to the altar's power, like throwing a rock at a mountain. But the physical impact caused the crystal's energy cycle to stutter for one infinitesimal instant. That was all I needed. Elenial, wake up! I screamed with my soul and emptied everything I had left into her. Golden light exploded in the depths of the abyss. Her body went rigid. The black madness in her eyes receded like a tide pulling back from shore. Intelligence, reason, pain, confusion, real emotions flickered back to life, one by one. She focused on me. This pale, blood-stained centaur smiling at her like he'd just won. That is it. You. Her first words in 300 years. Hoarse, cracked, but unmistakably her own. But the crystal sensed it had lost control. Dark chains tightened around her body instantly, trying to drag her awakened soul back into the pit. She looked at me, then down at her ruined body, then at the pulsing crystal. A sad, peaceful resolve settled across her face. "Young man, thank you," she whispered, her voice carrying the weight of 3 centuries. "But it's too late. Too late." I wiped the golden blood from my mouth and grinned. "As long as you're breathing, nothing's too late. Heroes don't get to quit." I pulled out a small crystal bottle of life spring water and drank it. The warmth flooded through me, and my nearly empty reserves started refilling. It wasn't a full recovery, but it was enough to keep me standing. Eleniel looked at me with admiration and deep sadness. She told me the truth I didn't want to hear. My power had woken her mind, but her body was beyond saving. After 300 years fused with abyssal energy, her flesh had become one with the darkness. She was a walking plague. Even awake, her body would keep generating corruption and calling dark creatures to this place. Aurora was sobbing. Lolan looked shattered. Eleniel gazed at them tenderly, like a grandmother seeing her family one last time. She told them not to cry. She should have died 300 years ago. Getting to see them with a clear mind was more than she'd ever hoped for. Then her eyes turned hard with determination. She said her body was still summoning every dark creature in the forest. The world tree couldn't wait for a slow solution. She was going to finish what she'd started 3 centuries ago. I understood what she meant before she said it. She closed her eyes and placed her hands together in an ancient druid gesture. She began singing, not a spell, but a farewell song to the land she'd loved and lost. Green light erupted from her heart, pure, warm, alive, like the first sunshine of spring. It spread across her entire body, dissolving the black curse marks like snow in sunlight. White laurel flowers bloomed from the corrupted patches of her skin. Her brittle hair turned soft and green, growing like a living waterfall. She was burning the one thing the abyss had never managed to corrupt, her druid's life essence, saved and protected through 300 years of darkness. The dark crystal below screamed in fury, tightening its chains. She spoke a single sacred word, and every chain shattered. Free at last, she floated upward wrapped in blazing green light, looking like a nature goddess descending from legend. She looked at me one final time. "Golden-blooded king, your power is this world's hope against the darkness. Promise me, protect Moonsong Grove. Protect Aurora." I nodded. "I swear it on my name as King of the Wind Hoof." She smiled with relief, then turned to Aurora and Lolan. "Don't mourn me. I died 300 years ago. Today, I'm just going home." She let out a cry that shook the sky. "With my broken body, I become the cage. With my soul, I seal the abyss forever." She transformed into a streak of green light and dove straight into the dark crystal. There was no explosion, just light swallowing darkness. Where the crystal had been, something impossible happened. A massive ancient tree erupted from the ground at supernatural speed. Its trunk was deep green, its branches twisted outward like dragons reaching for the sky. Its roots plunged downward, wrapping the altar and the crystal in a living, airtight prison. The moment the tree finished growing, every trace of evil in the ruins vanished. The air became clean, quiet, and solemn, carrying only a faint sadness. A single dewdrop fell from a new leaf and hit the stone floor with a tiny, perfect sound. It was over. Everyone stood in silence. My warriors couldn't fully understand what had happened, but they could feel the weight of a hero's sacrifice. Lolan bowed to the tree using the oldest druid ceremony he knew, tears running down his face. Aurora dried her eyes, walked to me, and bowed with absolute sincerity. "You didn't just save us. You gave a hero her dignity back." This time, there was nothing held back, no wariness, no distance, just genuine respect. I helped her up and looked at the tree, standing silently in a beam of moonlight falling through the broken ceiling. I knew the truth. Eleniel's sacrifice had sealed the corruption, not destroyed it. This place was still a ticking bomb, just one with a very strong lock on it. I turned to everyone and made my face stone cold. "Listen carefully. From today forward, this is what happened. I personally purified the source of corruption and destroyed all the monsters. That's the official story." I let my eyes sweep across every elf and every centaur present. This ruin, this tree, and what really happened here. It's the highest classified secret shared between the Wind Hoof Kingdom and Moonsong Grove. Anyone who leaks a single word, I let the killing intent in my voice finish the sentence. That will be executed for treason. Yes, sir. Every voice answered together, elf and centaur alike. I took one last look at the ancient tree standing guard in the moonlight. A silent sentinel, forever watching over a sealed evil. Let's go, I said. We're going home. The world tree is still waiting for us to save it. The journey back was quiet. My warriors marched in silence, their bloodied armor catching moonlight through the canopy. The elves grieved openly. Lolan kept sighing, and Aurora walked beside me with dimmed eyes, as if Elenial's sacrifice had taken something from her too. I didn't offer empty words. I just slowed my pace to match theirs. Aurora noticed. She thanked me softly for giving Elenial her dignity back. I told her I'd only done what was right. Heroes shouldn't die in shame. When we crossed back into Moonsong Grove's territory, everyone stopped. The air was cleaner. The leaves looked greener. The insects sang louder. And the world tree's heartbeat, which had been fading for a century, felt stronger. The little sprout Shalon and I had coaxed out earlier had grown to half a foot tall, its leaves gleaming like jade in the moonlight. Faint green was returning to the canopy above. Elves fell to their knees weeping with joy. I understood what had happened. Elenial's sacrifice wasn't just a seal, it was a gift. She'd poured her purest life essence back into the earth, back into the tree that was the source of all her power. A final act of love from a druid to her forest. It had stabilized the world tree. Not healed it, stabilized it. After the elves calmed down, I gathered their full leadership beneath the world tree and told them the truth. The official story was that I destroyed the corruption completely. But everyone in this room needed to understand reality. The source was sealed, not eliminated. The seal would hold for a while, but not forever. As long as the abyss existed beneath those ruins, none of us were truly safe. Then I made my move. I'm not here to accept thanks. I'm here to propose something. I turned to Aurora. I, Qin Hao, King of the Wind Hoof, request a permanent blood alliance with Moonsong Grove. I wish to marry your saintess, Aurora, and make her my queen, the sacred bond between our peoples. From that day forward, your enemies become my mortal enemies. My kingdom's glory becomes yours. Dead silence. Then chaos. The elves looked at me like I'd gone insane. Their saintess was the voice of the moon goddess, the symbol of their race's purity. Marry her to an outsider? A centaur? Unthinkable. Aurora's face turned bright red. Her heart was clearly pounding. I could see it in the way she breathed. She tried to speak, but couldn't form words while looking into my eyes. The Grand Elder slammed his staff on the ground, furious. He declared it an insult to their traditions and faith. Other elders piled on. The opposition was overwhelming. I stood there calmly, almost smiling, and waited. Then, to everyone's surprise, including mine, Lolan stepped forward. The same druid who'd called me a savage on our first meeting now bowed to the Grand Elder and said he supported my proposal. He told his people plainly, the darkness they'd witnessed was far beyond anything Moonsong Grove could handle alone. Clinging to tradition would only repeat the tragedy of 300 years ago. He admitted he'd been wrong about me. My power, my mercy, my wisdom were all greater than his. And my holy light and life spring were potentially their only hope for survival. The tide of opposition began to slow. Elves started reconsidering. The Grand Elder's face shifted through a dozen expressions. Finally, he spoke with a heavy voice. Prove it. Prove you deserve to protect our people. He pointed his staff at the world tree above us. Make it bloom. Make it bear fruit. Elenial's sacrifice bought us time, but the tree is still dying. If you truly have the power you claim, make a tree that's been withering for 100 years burst with life again, he added, with absolute seriousness. Do that, and we won't just give you the saintess. We'll follow you as our lord. Every elf there thought he'd just set an impossible task, something only a god could do. They expected me to back down or lose my temper. I looked up at that enormous, ancient, dying tree. I thought about the life spring, about Shalon's healing magic, about the holy power running through my blood, about the Moonwell blueprints I'd just unlocked, about everything the system had given me and everything I'd earned. I smiled. One word. Clear as a bell. Deal. My answer caught the Grand Elder completely off guard. He'd expected me to negotiate, stall, or back down. Instead, I just said, "Deal," and watched him choke on all the polite excuses he'd prepared. The other elders exchanged confused looks. They'd designed this challenge as a graceful way to reject the marriage. Nobody could actually make a dying tree bloom. Was I insane, or did I really have that kind of power? Lolan tried to warn me privately that reviving the world tree was basically impossible. I waved him off. "Since we have a bet," I said to the Grand Elder, "what's the time limit? A day? A month? A year?" He settled on 3 months, thinking even that was a fantasy. I shook my head. Too long. I held up one finger. 3 days. The elves stared at me like I'd lost my mind. One elder actually laughed out loud and asked if I thought I was a creator god. I ignored him and looked straight at the Grand Elder. "Do you accept or not?" He was trapped. Refusing would make him look like a coward in front of his people. He accepted through gritted teeth, then added that if I failed, I had to leave Moon's Song Grove forever. "Fine," I said. "But when I win, not if, when you personally officiate the wedding, and you publicly admit to Aurora and all your people that your stubbornness was wrong." His face turned purple. But the bet was set. I walked to the world tree and pressed my palm against its bark. Then I unleashed life's sovereignty at full power, not the controlled version I'd used before, but everything I had. Golden light poured from my body. A wave of divine authority over life itself rolled outward like a tsunami. Young elves collapsed to their knees involuntarily. Even the Grand Elder had to jam his staff into the ground to stay standing. My own warriors felt the opposite effect, energy flooding into them, making them feel invincible. But the real reaction came from the world tree itself. It trembled, not from wind, from recognition. Its leaves rustled in what sounded like joy. Green life energy from every direction rushed toward my hand, like rivers converging. The tree's fading heartbeat suddenly surged, pounding with new strength. Lolan whispered in disbelief. "It's responding to him. The mother tree is submitting to him." That word, submitting, hit every elf like a slap. They'd spent generations praying to this tree for the faintest response. I'd touched it once, and it reacted like a child running to its father. Aurora felt it most deeply through her natural connection. In her perception, I'd stopped being a person and become something like life itself, a king not just of centaurs, but of every living thing in this forest. The world tree was greeting me with trust and love. I pulled my hand away and turned to the speechless Grand Elder. "Still think 3 days is too short?" He couldn't form a single word. I gave quick orders to Freya and Terra. "Rest the troops, but keep full alert. Coordinate with Lolan on perimeter defenses." Then I took Aurora's hand and led her toward my tent. She flushed red and tried to pull away but couldn't break my grip. She followed me like a flustered schoolgirl, while young male elves glared daggers at my back. Inside the tent, I let go and laughed at her nervous expression. "Relax. I'm not going to eat you. I'm not scared," she shot back, her red ears betraying her completely. I handed her a crystal bottle full of life spring water and explained my real plan. My bloodline pressure was just a wake-up call for the tree, a shot of adrenaline. To actually heal it, we needed massive amounts of life energy delivered precisely. I would provide the divine power as a catalyst. The life spring would be the fuel. And Aurora, with her soul-level connection to the world tree, would be the perfect bridge. The three of us, me, her, and the spring, working as one. A surgical operation on a dying god tree. "This requires absolute trust between us," I told her, looking into her eyes. "Complete synchronization of spirit and power. Are you willing?" She stared at me for a long moment. Then understanding dawned. I'd never planned to do this alone. The impossible bet, the 3-day deadline, the pressure on the elders, it was all designed to bring her to this exact moment. Not as a prize to be won, but as a partner to stand beside me. She reached out with both hands and took the bottle of life spring water. Then she smiled. A real smile, the kind that made the moonlight look dim. "Yes," she said softly. "I'm willing." On the morning of the 3rd day, every elf in Moonsong Grove gathered around the world tree in a massive circle. Aurora and I stood at the base of the trunk, facing each other. We'd spent 2 days preparing, synchronizing our minds and powers until we could practically feel each other's thoughts. It was a strange and beautiful experience. Through Aurora's connection, I could sense every breath of the forest, every blade of grass. Aurora wore a white ceremonial gown, her silver hair floating in the morning breeze. She held a basin woven from the world tree's own branches, filled to the brim with life, spring water. I closed my eyes, steadied my breathing, and nodded. She began singing, an ancient elven hymn praising life and nature. Silver light rippled outward from her body. I stepped forward, placed my hands over the basin, and unleashed my divine power. By my name, I command all life. Golden energy flooded into the life spring water. The system confirmed a 200% boost to my life sovereignty effect. The clear water erupted with light, turning gold and green as my holy power merged perfectly with the life energy. Together they formed something entirely new, a force of pure creation. Aurora and I locked eyes, understanding each other without words. We pressed our hands against the world tree's trunk together. The combined energy surged into the tree like a river breaking through a dam. The world tree shook, 100 times more violently than before. A visible wave of life energy climbed from the roots toward the crown. Everywhere it passed, dry bark turned moist and healthy. Buds exploded from bare branches by the thousands, unfurling into gleaming green leaves. An ocean of green swept upward, covering the entire tree from root to tip in seconds. A tree that had been dying for a century was alive again. Elves were screaming, crying, jumping, hugging each other. 100 years of despair shattered in a few heartbeats. The Grand Elder stood shaking like a leaf, unable to speak. But it wasn't over. At the very top of the crown, all the light gathered into a single point. A massive flower bud appeared and slowly, majestically, opened. Its petals were pure moonlight white edged with golden lines. The center sparkled like a galaxy. When it fully bloomed, a fragrance beyond description filled the entire grove. The flower burst into a rain of light that fell on every elf present. Each droplet carried pure life essence. Elves who'd been stuck at cultivation bottlenecks for decades broke through instantly. Old battle injuries healed on the spot. Everyone who stood in that golden rain felt reborn, body and soul. The world tree's gift to its children. When it was done, I pulled my hands away. I was pale and drained, but my eyes were burning bright. Aurora swayed with exhaustion, and I caught her in my arms. We looked at each other and smiled. We'd done it. The system went wild in my head. Epic event completed. The full quest chain finished with a perfect rating. My soul compatibility with Aurora reached perfect. The entire elf nation's loyalty jumped to worship. Several elders hit die-hard loyal. I turned to the stunned Grand Elder, Aurora still in my arms. 3 days. Done. Ready to keep your promise? He stared at me, then at Aurora blushing happily in my arms, then at the magnificent green world tree towering above us all. Every ounce of stubbornness drained from his face, replaced by genuine awe and acceptance. He walked forward and bowed deeply. I apologized for my short-sightedness and disrespect. Then he looked at Aurora with gentle, fatherly eyes. My child, you found a king worthy of our people's future. Go. From today, you are not only our saintess, you are the Star Moon Queen of the Wind Hoof Kingdom. The wedding was held beneath the reborn world tree. The Grand Elder himself officiated. Elves sang their oldest blessing songs while my centaur warriors roared their battle cries in celebration. I placed a crown woven from the world tree's freshest leaves and starflowers on Aurora's head. That night, in the privacy of our tent, Aurora sat nervously on the bed in a thin silk gown, fidgeting with the fabric. I sat beside her and took her hand. Still nervous? She leaned against my shoulder. Thank you, Qin Hao, for everything you did for us, and for choosing me. I lifted her chin and kissed her. The system rewards flooded in at the peak of our union. Aurora was rated S level, the highest I'd ever achieved. My personal power broke through to 4th level, master rank. I was now officially among the continent's true powerhouses. I gained high-level nature affinity, letting me partially control natural forces. A new bloodline ability called Moonlight Blessing gave me a 5% boost to all stats at night, plus constant healing under moonlight. The kingdom rewards were even more exciting. We unlocked the Elven Magical Rune System, an entire technology tree. Blueprints for a moon goddess altar that would concentrate moonlight energy, accelerate crop growth, and boost all elf units by 10%. A training manual for elven magic archers, elite units with enchanted arrows. And the prize that made my heart race fastest. Blueprints for the -1 Malawian Kwacha magic crossbow, a rapid-fire weapon powered by monster crystals that could enchant steel bolts with armor-piercing and elemental effects. 3-shot bursts, lethal against any heavily armored unit up to 2nd level. That crossbow would change warfare completely. I could already picture thousands of enchanted bolts raining down on enemy formations, punching through shields and armor like paper. Aurora stirred against me, sensing my excitement. "What are you thinking about?" I looked down at my new wife, flushed, starry-eyed, impossibly beautiful, and grinned. "I'm thinking about who gets to be the first to test our wedding presents." Deep in the black forest, the dark creatures lurking in the shadows had no idea their time was running out. I woke up in Aurora's private treehouse at the very top of the World Tree, the closest spot to the stars in all of Moonsong Grove. She was sleeping on my chest, silver hair spilling everywhere, looking more peaceful than I'd ever seen her. Morning light filtered through the leaves and danced across her skin. For once, I just lay still and enjoyed the quiet. When she woke, I told her about the magic crossbow blueprints. Her reaction was exactly what I expected: hesitation. She explained that for elves, the bow wasn't just a weapon. It was a spiritual connection to wind and nature, an art form. Every shot was a meditation. A crossbow, in their eyes, was a clumsy, soulless machine. Using one would be beneath them. I told her gently but firmly that artistic elegance wouldn't stop an orc axe or punch through undead bone armor. The enemies ahead were too strong and too numerous for traditional archery alone. I needed firepower, overwhelming, armor-shredding firepower, and I needed her help convincing the stubborn elders. She looked into my eyes, weighed everything we'd been through together, and quietly promised to try. That afternoon, I announced the crossbow program publicly. The reaction was explosive. An elder named Silver Moon Chasing Wind, supposedly the greatest archer alive, able to hit a firefly at 300 paces, jumped up screaming about blasphemy. The bow was a gift from the moon goddess, he said. Replacing it with iron contraptions would disgrace their entire race. Most elves agreed loudly. Freya muttered something about wooden heads who'd rather get their skulls chopped off with honor than adapt and survive. The elves nearby heard her and turned purple with rage. I silenced the room with 2 quiet words. Then I offered Chasing Wind the same deal I'd used before: a contest. Give me 7 days. I'd build 30 crossbows and train a 30-person squad. His 30 best archers against my 30 crossbow operators. 3 rounds: range, accuracy, and destructive power. If I lost, I'd burn the blueprints in front of everyone. If I won, he'd personally become the chief instructor of the new crossbow corps and help spread the technology across the entire army. It was a brutal bet. I was asking him to potentially destroy his own legacy with his own hands. His pride wouldn't let him refuse. He accepted through clenched teeth, telling me not to embarrass myself too badly. "Worry about yourself," I said. After the meeting, Lolan pulled me aside, concerned. He warned me that Chasing Wind's skill was near supernatural. His arrows could literally ride the wind and change direction mid-flight. I told him I knew. That was exactly why I needed a crushing, undeniable victory. A close one would leave room for excuses. I needed to shatter their pride so completely that resistance became pointless. The darkness in the Black Forest wasn't going to wait for me to politely negotiate cultural change. That night, I headed back to my main camp with the blueprints and a group of open-minded young elf craftsmen that Aurora had selected. Freya was practically bouncing with excitement when she heard about the bet. Finally, time to teach those pointy-eared snobs a lesson. She immediately volunteered her strongest, steadiest warriors to learn the crossbow. I laid out the plan. 15 of Freya's toughest soldiers and 15 of Terra's most skilled craftsmen, combined with Aurora's elf engineers. 3 shifts around the clock, 7 days straight, producing 30 crossbows and training the operators simultaneously. I spread the blueprints across the work table, studying every detail of the magic rune mechanisms and crystal power cores. I wasn't just going to win. I was going to win so decisively that nobody would ever question new technology again. 7 days flew by. The entire elf population packed the Western training ground to watch the contest. On one side stood Chasing Wind and his 30 elite archers, tall, proud, holding gleaming elven longbows like they were extensions of their souls. They looked calm and confident, as if this was just another casual practice session. On my side stood a mixed squad of 15 burly centaur warriors and 15 young elves. They were holding the magic crossbows, heavy, black metal contraptions covered in blue runes, with thick arms and complex mechanisms. Not a shred of elegance. Pure industrial killing machines. The elves in the crowd were already laughing. Ugly iron lumps, too heavy to use in real combat. Chasing Wind told his students that warriors who relied on clumsy machines could never understand the true path of the archer. I ignored all of it. First round, accuracy and speed. Targets at 150 paces and small bronze bells at 300 paces. One stick of incense to score as many hits as possible. Hitting a target earned 1 point. Ringing a bell earned 3. Chasing Wind's team moved like water. 30 arrows flew simultaneously in perfect arcs, hitting every target at 150 paces. Without pausing, they reloaded and fired at the bells. 28 out of 30 rang out. The whole thing took less than half a minute. The crowd erupted. Then it was our turn. My squad looked clumsy, setting up their crossbows on stands and loading the crystal power cores. Elves mocked the slow preparation. I gave the order. First squad, 150 paces, triple burst, free fire. Second squad, 300 paces, single-aimed shots. The first crossbow fired with a deep hum, completely different from a bowstring's twang. The bolt flew almost perfectly straight and exploded the apple-sized target into pieces. Then the operator pulled the trigger twice more in rapid succession. 3 bolts in one breath, all hitting home. 30 crossbows opened up simultaneously. The targets at 150 paces didn't just get hit. They were shredded, pulverized, turned to dust under a storm of metal bolts. At 300 paces, the first volley was rougher. Only about half the bells rang. But the crossbows had simple aiming sights built in. The operators adjusted quickly. Second volley, 25 out of 30 bells. The key difference was volume. With the triple burst mechanism and the bolt's superior speed, my squad poured out 3 times the firepower of the archers in the same time period. And unlike archery, which required decades of training, a soldier could learn to operate a crossbow competently in days. When the incense burned out, the scores were tallied. Elf archers, 144 points. My crossbow squad, 427 points. The crowd went silent. Every smirk froze in place. Chasing Wind's face darkened. He tried to save face. This is just a trick. Real enemies don't stand still. Good point, I said. Let's do round 2. Freya wheeled out 10 massive tower shields. Ironwood wrapped in thick iron plating, simulating the heavy shields orc infantry actually used in battle. This round is about destructive power. Whoever can destroy these shields wins. Chasing Wind ordered his team to switch to armor-piercing arrows. Black, 3-sided arrowheads designed for maximum penetration. 30 arrows slammed into the shields with dull thuds. They punched through the iron skin and stuck deep in the wood, but not a single shield was penetrated all the way through. The shields shook, but held. The elves' faces fell for the first time. Our turn, I said. Crossbow team, switch to armor-piercing runes. Triple volley. The operators turned a dial on their crossbows. The blue runes shifted to angry red. 30 bolts launched with glowing runic patterns racing along their shafts. They weren't just metal projectiles anymore. They were miniature missiles. They hit the shields. No thuds this time. Just the horrifying sound of metal tearing and wood exploding. Every single shield was punched clean through. Not just pierced, but blown open with bowl-sized holes. Edges still glowing red-hot. The bolts kept going and buried themselves deep in the earth behind. 10 tower shields, turned into sieves. Not one survived. Dead silence. The only sound was wind whistling through the holes. Chasing Wind walked slowly to one of the destroyed shields. He touched the smooth, scorching edge of a hole with trembling fingers. He stood there for a long time, staring at the ruin of everything he'd believed about combat. I walked up beside him. No gloating, no mockery. Just a quiet question. Do you still think it's a soulless iron lump? He was silent for what felt like forever. Everyone thought he'd storm off in anger. Instead, he turned to me and bowed deeply. Your Majesty, he said in a voice I'd never heard from him before. Raw, humble, reborn. Please, give me the chief instructor position. The most stubborn traditionalist in the elf nation had just surrendered to the future. Aurora watched from the crowd, her starlit eyes shining. She knew that today, her people had turned a page they could never turn back. And the one holding the pen was her king. Chasing Wind's transformation shocked everyone, including me. Once he accepted the crossbow, he threw himself into it with the obsessive dedication of a true master. He stopped seeing it as an ugly machine and started treating it as a new form of his craft. Over the next 2 weeks, he wrote an entirely new combat manual for the crossbow corps. He invented a staggered firing technique where small teams alternated their triple bursts, creating an endless wall of bolts with no gaps. He taught the operators to read wind currents the way elf archers did, dramatically improving long-range accuracy. The Centaur-elf combination turned out to be devastatingly effective. A centaur's powerful lower body made the perfect mobile shooting platform. One centaur carrying one elf crossbow operator created a fast-moving gun turret that could race through forest terrain and deliver lethal fire from any position. 100 of these pairs formed our first truly mixed-race elite unit, the kingdom's new ace. They just needed a real battle to prove themselves. It came soon enough. A scouting team Terra had sent to survey underground energy lines in the swamplands sent a distress signal. 500 well-equipped orcs had them pinned on a small hill. Their commander was a war chief riding a giant wolf, at least mid-third level strength. Some of the orcs even carried crude enchanted weapons. Freya wanted to take the heavy cavalry. I said no. This was the crossbow corps' graduation exam. I led the 100 magic crossbow operators personally. Freya followed 30 miles behind with 500 heavy cavalry as backup. Aurora and Lolan stayed at Moonsong Grove in case of a diversionary attack. We found the trapped scouts making their last stand, 20-something wounded centaurs and a few elf guards, back-to-back on a hilltop, surrounded. The orc commander, a brute called Grom the Bone Crusher, was watching from his wolf mount, grinning as his soldiers prepared to overwhelm them. He never heard us coming. From the tree line, 100 crossbows fired simultaneously. The hum was like a swarm of death hornets. The front wave of charging orcs, over 100 of them, simply stopped moving. Their bodies went rigid, then dropped all at once. Every single one had 2 or 3 bowl-sized holes punched clean through them. Leather armor, iron shields, nothing helped. One heartbeat of eerie silence. Then panic. Before the orcs could process what happened, I ordered the second volley. This time we targeted their rear, archers and shamans. Chasing Wind's precision training showed. Every bolt flew over the frontline warriors and drilled into the soft targets behind them. Shamans died mid-chant, pinned to the mud by 3 bolts each. Mobile fire, rotating cover, free hunt. Leave none alive. The death machine started spinning. 50 centaurs carrying 50 elf shooters raced across the battlefield at terrifying speed, sometimes clustering for devastating concentrated fire, sometimes spreading like wolves to chase scattered groups. The elemental rune effects turned the swamp into a nightmare. Ice bolts froze orcs solid before centaur hooves shattered them. Fire bolts turned screaming orcs into running torches. Lightning bolts paralyzed them where they stood for follow-up kills. It wasn't a battle. It was a harvest. Grom saw his army evaporating. In desperation, he charged straight at me on his warwolf. Kill the leader, the only move he had left. I didn't even bother drawing a weapon. I just turned to Chasing Wind beside me and said, "Show him what art looks like." The old master took a personally modified crossbow, switched it to single-shot sniper mode, and did something I'd never seen before. He merged his spirit with the bolt the way he used to merge with arrows. One shot, glowing pale blue, tracing an almost invisible curve through the air. It slipped past the axe Grom raised to block and found the thinnest gap in his chest armor. The bolt went through his heart. Grom toppled from his wolf into the mud, dead before he understood what killed him. The remaining orcs broke completely. We hunted down every last one. When the swamp finally went quiet, I walked to one of the bodies and pulled a black token from its belt, carved with the image of a burning eye. The system identified it as a scout badge from the Destruction Cult, based in a place called Burning Bone Highlands. I stared at it. These orcs weren't random raiders. They were an advance party for something much bigger, a religious army serving some dark power. I looked north toward the distant mountain range. Somewhere beyond those peaks lay a land blackened by volcanic ash, and on it, an army of orcs was gathering. An army that worshipped destruction itself. The troubles ahead were going to be far larger than anything I'd faced so far, and they were coming faster than I'd expected. The victory at Blackwater Swamp spread like wildfire. 100 crossbow operators, 0 casualties, 500 orcs wiped out, including their third-level commander, sniped by a single curved shot. It sounded too perfect to be real, but every soldier who'd been there could confirm it. The celebration under the World Tree was something I'd never seen before. Centaurs and elves drinking together, arm in arm, bragging about the battle like old war buddies. The racial tension that had simmered for weeks had finally melted away in shared victory. Chasing Wind sat in the middle of a crowd of young elf admirers, but he wasn't holding a bow. He was cradling a crossbow, polishing it obsessively, muttering about tail fin aerodynamics and wind element rune etchings. The old purist had become the most passionate innovator in the entire army. The other elves didn't know whether to laugh or be impressed. I sat at the head table with my queens. Freya was drinking aggressively. She was bitter about being stuck in the reserve and converting that frustration into alcohol. Aurora raised her glass with quiet grace, and the whole room fell silent for her toast. Tara wordlessly refilled my cup, her eyes saying everything her mouth didn't. That night, I visited each of them. Tara first. I found her studying geological maps by moonlight, her Earth bloodline giving her natural insight into mineral deposits near the burning Bone Highlands. I wrapped my arms around her from behind and told her the geology could wait. She had more important, internal affairs to handle. She blushed, turned around, and kissed me first. Beneath her calm, steady exterior, there was a passion she only showed to me. Then Freya. She greeted me by throwing a flaming axe at my head. She was furious I'd sidelined her for the crossbow demonstration. I dodged her second swing, grabbed her wrist, threw her over my shoulder, and carried her to bed. With Freya, everything was a fight, and that was exactly what made it exciting. After that storm, I needed peace. I found Aurora meditating under the World Tree in moonlight, looking less like a mortal woman and more like a goddess. I asked if she regretted marrying a centaur. She leaned into my chest and said her destiny used to be tied to the World Tree. Now it was tied to me. The kiss that followed was nothing like the wildfire with Freya. It was deep, quiet, and healed every ounce of tension in my soul. 3 nights, 3 very different women, 3 completely different experiences. But on the 4th morning, standing alone on the balcony looking east toward the grasslands, I felt something missing. A hollow ache I couldn't explain. I was thinking about Luna. Luna, who'd stood in front of an axe for me when I was still a worthless human. Who'd carried me on her back through enemy territory without a word of complaint. Who loved me not because I became powerful, but because she'd sworn to, long before any of that mattered. Every other queen's love carried traces of conquest, given or received. Luna's was simply there, unconditional, written into her bones. I wondered how she was doing, how the twins were growing, whether she was eating properly, resting enough. Then a messenger arrived from the Windhoof tribe, carrying a letter sealed with Luna's personal mark, a crescent moon circling a hoofprint. I opened it. Just 2 words in her neat, strong handwriting. My king, come home. That was all I needed. My heart was already racing east. I called my officers immediately, handed Moonsong Grove's defenses over to the 3 queens and the elders, and took Shalon with me for the journey. I remembered Luna had seemed slightly unwell before I left. Bringing my best healer was the smart move. The ride home was smooth. The grasslands were thriving, herders with livestock, new watchtowers dotting the horizon, trade caravans moving freely. Everything I'd built was working. When the Windhoof settlement appeared on the horizon, the walls were bustling with life. Guards on the ramparts spotted my banner, and the cheering started before I even reached the gates. The old ministers who greeted me were grinning ear to ear. "Where's Luna?" I asked before my hooves touched the ground. "In her chambers, resting. She said to send you straight to her the moment you arrived." Something about wonderful news. I didn't ask anything else. I grabbed Shalon and headed for the royal tent at a run. The whole tribe seemed to radiate happiness, as if everyone already knew something I didn't. As I got closer to the royal tent, I felt more and more guilty for being away so long. But I was amazed at how much the tribe had changed. The roads were smooth and wide. There were new guard towers, and the market area was busy with foreign traders. The whole place felt alive and growing. Luna had done all of this while I was gone conquering elves and saving the world tree. She didn't just keep things running, she made everything better. I rushed toward our tent, but before I could get inside, two little cannonballs shot out and slammed into my waist from both sides. Even with my fourth-rank warrior body, I stumbled back 2 steps and left footprints in the ground. I looked down and saw 2 kids hanging off me, a boy with black hair like mine, and a girl with moon-white hair like Luna's. They looked about 3 or 4 years old and wore tiny leather armor. Their strength was unbelievable for their size. Even a second-rank warrior might not handle that hit. My son shouted that their mother told them the man who doesn't get knocked back 10 meters must be their father. My daughter just said, "Father is strong." I couldn't help but laugh. I picked them both up and held them in the air. Their little legs kept flickering between human form and scaled horse legs. They still couldn't fully control their bloodline powers yet. They told me this was the royal welcome ceremony, the highest honor. I could just picture Luna saying that with a straight face. That woman always loved making up nonsense so seriously. Their names are Qin Hao and Qin Yu, the twins Luna had for me. When I left, they could barely walk. Now, just months later, they were running around and strong enough to knock me backward. But it made sense. My blood carries divine and demonic power, and Luna descends from the moonlight divine steed. Our kids were never going to grow like normal children. Luna stood at the tent entrance in a simple long dress, her white hair tied back. Her face showed no expression, but her eyes were softer than before. When I said, "I'm back," she just nodded and asked if the kids hurt me. My son bragged that I only stepped back twice, unlike the Grand Elder who got knocked rolling 3 times. Inside the tent, Luna told me why she called me back. A group of dwarves and goblins had shown up near a patch of cursed land we call the Black Oil Ground. That land always leaks thick black liquid that stinks, catches fire easily, and kills any plants or animals nearby. Everyone in the tribe avoids it. A goblin named Grisnik offered to rent that worthless land for 1,000 gold coins a year for 100 years. That's a huge amount, enough to arm 100 elite soldiers. Why would anyone pay that much for land nobody wants? Luna was smart enough not to agree right away. She said the price felt like a trap and called me back to decide. I told her she did the right thing. Before meeting these traders, I wanted to go see that black oil ground for myself first. As the sun was setting, I got ready to head southwest to check out that cursed land. I was about to grab a horse, but then I looked at Luna and hesitated. We used to ride together all the time. She's a centaur, after all. But now that we're closer, it felt wrong to treat her like a mount. She saw right through me and teased, "What? Now that you're king, you're too shy?" She bent down and told me to stop being ridiculous and get on. Her warmth made my doubts disappear, and I climbed on. She ran faster and smoother than any horse. Before we even got close, I smelled it. A sharp, chemical stink mixed with sulfur. To everyone in this world, it smelled like a curse. But to me, a soul from the 21st century, that smell was unmistakable. I jumped off Luna's back and walked across the sticky black ground. The land was dead for miles around. No grass, just pools of thick black liquid bubbling up from the earth. I crouched down, dipped my finger in, smelled it, rubbed it between my fingers. My heart started pounding. This wasn't cursed dragon blood. This was petroleum, oil, black gold, the fuel that drives civilizations. I understood immediately why those dwarves and goblins wanted this land so badly. The dwarves needed fuel for their forges and steam machines. The goblins saw profits big enough to reshape the entire continent's economy. And they were trying to buy it from me for 1,000 gold coins a year. They were treating me like some clueless tribal chief. Luna told me the local legend, that a black dragon died here long ago and its blood poisoned the earth. I smiled. That legend was actually going to be very useful. I already had a plan forming. This oil field had to stay in my hands. And those dwarves and goblins? I'd make them work for me willingly, bringing their technology and trade routes along with them. Back at their camp, I met the 2 leaders. Grisnik the goblin was short, green-skinned, and immediately started flattering me with a fake smile. Borland the dwarf was stocky with braided beards down to the ground. He just gave me a respectful nod. One was sly as a fox, the other steady as a mountain. Grisnik tried his pitch, calling the oil just special alchemy material and offering 1,000 gold to borrow the wasteland for small experiments. I listened without showing any emotion. Then I flipped the whole conversation. Instead of talking about oil, I called the land, the sacred site where our ancestor Black Dragon fell. Now it wasn't a business deal. It was about honor and heritage. Grisnik panicked and raised his offer to 2,000 gold. I didn't even look at him. I turned to Borland and told him things that shocked him. That his Iron-Beard tribe's forges hadn't run at full power in 30 years because of fuel shortages, that their steam golem project was stalled. His eyes went wide. He couldn't figure out how I knew their tribe's secrets. Then I told Grisnik I knew the goblins planned to use this oil to monopolize continental transportation with their airships and control every kingdom's economy. They both looked at me like I'd stripped them naked. All their secrets and ambitions laid bare. I gave them two choices. First, take your gold and get out. I ban all dwarves and goblins from coming within 100 miles of this land, forever. Second, we become partners. I provide the land and resources. They provide the technology, craftsmen, and trade routes. We develop the oil field together, not as a rental, but as a real partnership. The split? 70% for me, 30% for them. Grisnik screamed that I was robbing them. I ignored him completely and looked straight at Borland. Master Borland, just answer me one question. Do you want the Iron-Beard forges to burn with flames hot enough to melt the stars again? That question hit the old dwarf like a hammer right to the heart. Borland the dwarf stared at me like he was trying to see through my soul. I'd hit his deepest nerve, the ancient dream of every dwarf blacksmith, flames hot enough to melt stars. His voice shook when he asked what made me so sure. Because that oil field is in my hands, I told him simply. Without me, your forges just keep getting colder. Then I turned to Grisnik the goblin. I asked him if he wanted a product so powerful that every king on the continent would have to sit down and negotiate with goblins as equals. He opened his mouth but couldn't say a word. As a merchant, he understood exactly what controlling a resource like this meant. Not just money, but real power. Grisnik kept fighting the 70-30 split, demanding 50-50. He said they were bringing the technology and the workers, so why should I get 70% just for sitting around? I shut that down cold. Because I'm the king. And the biggest risk here is me. I told them both the truth they hadn't thought about. Once the world finds out what this oil is worth, the human empire and the destruction cult will come knocking. My kingdom will be the one facing armies, not them. 4 of my 7 shares would go toward building the swords and walls to protect this land. Their 3 shares? That's them counting money safely under my protection. The whole camp went silent. My words were bold, but every single one was true. They'd only seen the profit. I'd already seen the blood and fire that would follow. Borland decided first. He slammed his axe into the ground and agreed. The Iron-Beard tribe would ally with my kingdom and provide all their oil refining technology and craftsmen. His one condition: his tribe gets first right to buy 30% of the refined oil at a 20% discount. I agreed immediately. That was a fair deal for someone bringing real technology to the table. Grisnik saw the dwarf had already switched sides and knew it was over. His green face scrunched up like a bitter melon, but being a goblin, he recovered fast. Suddenly I was brilliant and wise beyond the stars. He pledged the Goblin Trade Alliance would handle all the sales routes and the dirty work nobody else wanted to touch. Just like that, a tense standoff became an agreement to carve up the future together, all under my control. When I brought the signed treaty back to the royal tent, Luna read it over. She might not have understood every technical term, but she saw the 2 things that mattered: 70-30 split, and our kingdom holds final ownership. She looked up at me with something shining in her eyes. I always seemed to turn worthless things into treasures. Little Qin, you ran over asking if I brought snacks. I laughed, picked her up, and kissed her cheek. What I brought back will make sure our tribe eats roasted meat every single day. In my mind, a grand vision was already unfolding. Our magic crossbows were powerful but expensive. They needed monster crystals for energy. But with oil, internal combustion engines, steam engines, factories, armored units, maybe even aircraft someday. An industrial empire generations ahead of this world. Then the system chimed in my head. It detected that I'd secured crude oil and formed deep partnerships with the dwarves and goblins. A new quest chain unlocked: Steam and Iron Throne. The first mission was to build a basic oil refinery and produce the first barrel of proper diesel fuel. The rewards included an industrial technology tree, blueprints for a steam water pump, and a gear-driven forging press, plus 5,000 fortune points. My eyes sharpened. The system had given me a clear path forward. Those blueprints meant real industrial production, standardized, stronger metal parts, and faster resource extraction. I'd come home just to see my family and handle a small trade dispute. Instead, I'd knocked on the door of a brand new era. I gave orders to put the tribe on highest alert starting tomorrow, a military zone around the oil field, 100 miles in every direction. Luna gripped her spear and asked if war was coming. I shook my head and smiled. No, it's our era that's coming. She looked at me for a long moment, then walked over and straightened my messy collar. Her voice went soft. But tonight, you're not the king giving orders. You're just my husband, and you and Feng's father. I pulled her close. She stiffened for just a second, then melted into me. The children were already asleep in the corner. I blew out the candle and carried her to our bed. Outside, the campfire crackled and the night wind played with the tent flaps like a quiet song for two people finally together again. The day after signing the Black Gold Treaty, my entire kingdom kicked into gear like a war machine. My orders spread to every corner of the land. I drew a 100-mile circle around the oil field and turned it into a military zone. Thousands of my best Centaur warriors set up over 30 watchtowers and patrol camps along the border, all armed with our newest magic crossbows. The rule was simple. Anyone who enters without permission gets killed on sight, no matter who they are or what race. No exceptions. Every tribe in my kingdom could feel the tension. They didn't understand why I was making such a fuss over a piece of cursed wasteland, but my authority was absolute. Nobody dared question me. They just obeyed. Borland brought 300 dwarf craftsmen, and Grisnik showed up with over 1,000 goblin workers. They moved into the restricted zone immediately. When Borland stood at the edge of the oil field, even that tough old dwarf couldn't hide his excitement. His beard was shaking. The ground was like a sponge soaked in oil. One step and black liquid oozed up through the cracks. Grisnik's alchemy scanning device showed that the underground oil layer was so deep it was practically an ocean of fuel, not just a field. Borland knew exactly what this meant. His tribe's forges had been running cold for 30 years. Their steam golem project, machines that could change warfare forever, had been stuck on paper because they never had enough fuel. Now he was standing on top of enough fuel to bring those iron giants to life. Those two went from arguing with me at the negotiation table to being my most enthusiastic workers overnight. They couldn't help it. I held all the cards. The resource was mine. The military protection was mine. All they had to do was bring their skills and trade routes, and they'd walk away with 30% profit. That's a deal anyone would take. Plus, they'd seen how fast I could mobilize an army to lock down 100 miles of territory. Any sneaky ideas they might have had died right there. I stood on a hill watching the construction below. Luna was beside me, her silver hair blowing in the wind. She asked quietly if I really trusted them. No, I said. I don't trust their character. I trust the prophet keeping them loyal, and my fist keeping them afraid. I pointed at my warriors below. As long as my army could crush any traitor easily, the treaty would hold. Prophet makes people stay. Fear of my strength makes them not even think about leaving. But the dwarves and goblins weren't my real worry. The real problem was the flies who'd smell blood. My kingdom wasn't the only centaur tribe on these plains. There were over a dozen others scattered across this land. Before, nobody fought because there was nothing worth fighting over. The land was too poor. But now I'd brought in dwarves, goblins, and an army, and set up a military zone. Even a fool could tell something valuable was hidden there. Centaurs might not know what oil or industry means, but they know one thing. If goblins, who never spend a coin without good reason, are throwing themselves at something, it must be treasure. I'd already sent scouts out 300 miles. I figured the neighboring tribes would be sending people to sniff around any day now. The oil field was like raw meat thrown into a pack of hungry wolves. The dwarves and goblins were a small problem I could handle with profit and muscle. But the other centaur tribes were trickier. We share the same bloodline. If I attack them outright, it looks bad. But letting them get involved? Absolutely not. I wouldn't give up a single grain of sand from this land. I gave Luna a cold order. Patrols at full alert, starting now. Any stranger within 100 miles of the zone gets one warning. If they keep coming, shoot to kill. No need to ask permission. Her eyes went sharp, and she left to carry it out. The system rang in my head, confirming the first mission of the Steam and Iron Throne quest chain was active. Build a basic oil refinery. Produce the first barrel of proper diesel. The rewards would unlock an industrial tech tree and give me blueprints for a steam water pump and a gear-driven forging press. The foundation of real manufacturing. I muttered to myself that I needed to build up my strength before the real storm hit. The neighboring Centaur tribes were just appetizers. The true enemies were the orcs of the destruction cult to the north and the human empire watching from beyond the mountains. They didn't know what oil was worth yet. But the moment the first engine-powered war machine roared onto a battlefield, the entire world would turn its eyes here. When that day comes, I'll be facing the greed of the whole world. So before anyone catches on, I need to build an iron throne that nobody can break. Just like I expected, trouble showed up faster than I thought. Only 3 days after the treaty, a force of over 100 Centaur warriors appeared at my security line. Their leader was a massive centaur named Redmane Firehoof, chief of the Redmane tribe, the strongest tribe near my territory. His lower body was covered in fiery red fur that looked like flames in the sunlight. My patrol captain ordered them to stop, pointing a magic crossbow at them. Redmane just laughed and said he didn't remember this land belonging to the Windhoof tribe alone. He called me that centaur who only keeps his throne because of his women, and said I had no right to give him orders. His warriors behind him all laughed along. These traditional centaurs looked down on me for marrying women of different races. They thought a real centaur should conquer everything with hooves and spears alone. My patrol captain held his fire like I'd ordered. Don't attack first, just report back. When I got the news, I wasn't surprised at all. 3 tribes had come: Redmane, Blackstone, and Wildwind. Together they had nearly 10,000 fighters. Not a small force. Grisnik was panicking, terrified someone would steal our prize. Borland offered to send his 300 dwarf warriors, each worth 10 normal soldiers. I waved them both off. No need to use a sledgehammer to crack a nut. These were just country bumpkins who'd never seen the real world. I'd use them to test my new troops. Luna objected when I said I'd meet them personally. I told her not to worry. On my own land, nobody could touch me. And some things needed to come from the king's own mouth to be understood. Half an hour later, the 3 chiefs walked into my meeting tent with their bodyguards: Redmane Firehoof, Blackstone Mountain, and Wildwind Sandstorm. They looked me up and down with judgmental eyes. In my human form, I looked thin compared to their bulging muscles. "You're Qin Hao?" Redmane asked, dripping with arrogance. I didn't even look up. I just kept drinking my water like he wasn't there. The silence got awkward. Redmane's face darkened. Nobody had ever ignored him like this. He raised his voice and stepped forward. "Qin Hao, I'm talking to you." I slammed my cup on the table. The bang shut everyone up. I slowly raised my eyes and looked at him the way you'd look at a clown. Did I say you could speak? My voice was quiet, but the authority behind it made the whole room feel colder. All 3 chiefs froze. They'd prepared for anger, for excuses, for bluffing, but not for complete contempt. I simply didn't consider them worth my attention. Redmane stammered, "What do you mean?" I stood up and walked right up to them. I looked each chief in the face, one by one. "This is my territory. You're standing here because I allowed it. Now tell me, why are you buzzing around my land like flies?" Blackstone, the calmer one, tried to sound reasonable. He said the oil land had always been shared territory for all Centaur tribes, and that I owed them an explanation for locking it down with soldiers. I laughed coldly. This land was cursed wasteland for 100 years. You all avoided it like the plague. Now that my kingdom is developing it, suddenly it's your shared territory? I told them straight. This land is now called Dragonfall Ground. It's my kingdom's most sacred territory, blessed by my ancestors and the spirit of the Black Dragon. What I do here, I don't explain to anyone. You have 2 choices. First, take your people and get out of my sight. Right now. Second, I'll send you underground so you can ask the Black Dragon my ancestor killed whose land this really is. The room went dead silent. All 3 chiefs stood there with their mouths open. They'd come expecting a long negotiation where they could use their numbers to pressure me into sharing. They thought they'd leave with a piece of the pie. They never imagined I wouldn't even bother negotiating. I just flipped the table. This wasn't a discussion. It was an ultimatum. "You're too arrogant," Redmane screamed at me, his face burning red. Who do you think you are? A god? Your little tribe dares challenge all three of us at once. Our combined armies are 10,000 strong. We could drown you in spit. Wild Wind joined in the yelling. Only Blackstone kept somewhat calm, though even he was clearly shaken by how hard I was pushing. I just smiled wider. 10,000 soldiers? Scary. I walked back to my seat, sat down, picked up my water, and blew on it casually. Like they'd just told me about 10,000 ants, not warriors. That kind of total disrespect made them angrier than any insult could. I know exactly what you're thinking, I told them. You think my tribe is small. You think I'm weak because I'm married women of different races. You think your numbers mean you've got me cornered. Their faces confirmed everything. You don't even know what's in this ground. You don't care. You just saw dwarves and goblins working here and figured there must be treasure worth grabbing. Every word cut right to their true intentions, and they couldn't hide it. I'll give you one chance, I said. A chance to give up. I snapped my fingers and called for Elder Chasing Wind and the first magic crossbow squad to assemble at the shooting range. The three chiefs looked confused. They had no idea who Elder Chasing Wind was or what a magic crossbow squad meant. When the elf elder arrived, all three chiefs nearly choked. A legendary elf elder, here in my kingdom, bowing to me with full respect. Their minds couldn't process it. This barren grassland wasn't supposed to have any connection to the noble elf race. At the range, 100 soldiers stood in perfect formation, half elves, half centaurs, mixed together seamlessly. Each one carried a pitch-black crossbow covered in glowing blue runes. Redmane scoffed. Crossbows? That's a weapon for foot soldiers and weaklings. I ignored him and nodded to Elder Chasing Wind. Target. Heavy armor plates. 800 meters. Redmane almost laughed out loud. 800 meters? Their best archers maxed out at 500, and arrows had no power left at that range. He was ready to watch me embarrass myself. Then the crossbows fired. No bowstring sound, just a bone-chilling magical hum. 100 bolts glowing blue shot out like lightning. They moved so fast the eye couldn't track them. A split second later, the heavy targets 800 meters away were riddled with bolts buried deep in the wood and steel. Dead silence. All three chiefs stood frozen with their mouths hanging open like they'd been turned to stone. But I wasn't done. Switched to armor-piercing runes. Target. Steel tower shields, 1,000 meters. The runes on the crossbows shifted from blue to angry red. Workers set up shields 3 fingers thick made of hardened steel, strong enough to block a third-rank warrior's full power strike. The crossbows fired again. 100 red streaks, even faster than before. The steel shields exploded. Every single one had a fist-sized hole punched clean through it. Shattered metal fragments glittered in the sunlight. Redmane swallowed hard. Cold sweat dripped down his forehead. I could see him doing the math in his head. If his 10,000 warriors charged, they'd be torn apart before they got within 500 meters. It wouldn't be a battle. It would be a slaughter. His entire army was a joke against this kind of weapon. I let the silence hang for a moment, then spoke quietly. So, chiefs, can you see clearly now? I'll ask one more time. Are you leaving on your own, or do I need to send you off? After the demonstration, the three chiefs stood there gasping, their faces changing colors like a painting, red to white to green. Fear had grabbed them by the throat. Everything they were proud of, their bravery, their riding and shooting skills, looked like a joke compared to what they'd just witnessed. Blackstone couldn't even form words. Wild Wind's legs were shaking so badly he could barely stand. All he wanted was to run. Redmane was fighting with himself inside. His brain told him to surrender, but his pride as a famous warrior wouldn't let him bow. So he tried one last move. He challenged me to a one-on-one duel. He was a peak third-rank fighter, almost fourth rank. He figured even if I was strong, I couldn't be that much better than him in single combat. I laughed right in his face. Do you still not understand the situation? I walked up to him and poked his chest with one finger. I'm a king. You're just a tribal chief. What makes you think you're worthy of dueling me? I told them I didn't come here to discuss, negotiate, or play their little fighting games. I was here to give them orders. Then I gave them their real choices. 10 seconds to decide. Option 1. Swear loyalty to me. Their tribes join my kingdom. Their warriors get reorganized under my command. Their land becomes part of my territory. In return, they get the order and wealth my kingdom brings. Option 2. They die right here, today. Then my army wipes out their tribes completely. I started counting down. They were stunned. They'd expected me to chase them away or humiliate them, but total annexation? This wasn't about land anymore. This was about their tribe's survival. Blackstone screamed that I was starting a war against all centaurs. I just sneered. War? You think you deserve that word? Wild Wind yelled that they'd fight me, but his whole body was trembling and gave away his real feelings. Redmane's mind was racing. Surrender meant his lifelong pride was destroyed. But fight back? Those magic crossbow soldiers surrounding us would cut them down in less than a second. And his 10,000 warriors back home? After seeing what those weapons could do, numbers meant nothing. His mental walls crumbled piece by piece with every number I counted. Right before I reached 1, Redmane, this man who'd been proud his entire life, dropped to his knees. His upper body hit the ground in a full bow. Redmane tribe, Chief Red, Mane Firehoof, is willing to swear loyalty. His voice was full of shame and bitterness, but the fear of death and worry for his people won out over pride. The moment he knelt, the other two collapsed like their strings had been cut. Blackstone and Wild Wind both hit the ground. Blackstone tribe swears loyalty. Wild Wind tribe swears loyalty. I looked down at them without any expression. I knew tribes taken by force would hold grudges. But that didn't matter. This was just the beginning. I'd show them with time that today's decision was the smartest thing they'd ever done. Good, I said. If you're loyal, prove it. Go back to your tribes right now. Gather every warrior second rank and above. Be here tomorrow morning for reorganization. Also, report all your food, ore, and medicine supplies. Any objections? Redmane forced the words through his teeth. No, none. He knew I was stripping them of their military and financial power, hollowing them out completely. But he had no choice left. Good. Now get out. I waved them off like shooing flies. They scrambled to their feet and fled the range, stumbling over each other in their hurry to leave. Behind me, Grisnik the Goblin was shaking with excitement. He'd been worried the oil field would bring endless trouble. Now he saw that with me in charge, anyone looking for trouble was really looking for death. I stared toward the horizon where those 3 tribes lived. This is just the beginning, I said quietly. Every centaur on these plains would become part of my kingdom. I needed to unite all of them and gather every resource I could, because the real war was still coming. My eyes looked past everything, all the way north to the burning Bone Highlands, where the banner of the destruction cult flew. That was my true enemy. These centaur tribes were just the first step, unifying my own backyard before the real fight began. The 3 chiefs stumbled back to their camp looking like ghosts. Their thousands of waiting warriors were completely confused. They'd expected their leaders to come back with good news, or at least a plan to fight. Instead, they looked like someone had died. The warriors crowded around, asking what happened and when they'd attack. They were fired up and ready for war. Redmane looked at all these eager fighters and felt nothing but sadness. They had no idea what they were up against. He took a deep breath and shouted for silence. Then he dropped the bomb. From today, the Redmane tribe joins the Wind Hoof Kingdom. Qin Hao is our only king. The camp exploded. Warriors screamed in protest. One of Redmane's best fighters, a top archer named Iron Hoof, stepped forward and refused to accept it. Redmane asked him a simple question. How far can you shoot? 550 meters, Iron Hoof answered proudly. Good. Now imagine an enemy that can shoot through solid steel shields from 1,000 meters away. While standing still, Iron Hoof laughed. Even legendary elf archers couldn't do that, he said. Redmane didn't laugh. He described everything he'd seen at my shooting range. The heavy targets shredded at 800 meters, the steel shields punched full of holes at 1,000. He described the sound of the magic crossbows firing, the blue and red streaks of light, the metal shattering like paper. The laughter died. Every warrior stared with wide eyes. They knew their chief never lied. Iron Hoof's voice started shaking. As a top archer himself, he understood better than anyone that this kind of power was beyond anything arrows could ever match. Redmane told them the hard truth. Our cavalry charges would just be target practice for them. We'd all die before we even saw their faces. Do you still think we can fight back? The camp went completely silent. The same scene played out at the Blackstone and Wild Wind camps. Once the warriors heard what those weapons could do, every voice of resistance went quiet. The next morning, I stood on a command platform looking down at a massive army. Overnight, Over 3,000 elite warriors from all three tribes had been broken up and mixed into my regular forces. The three former chiefs became deputy commanders. They kept titles, but lost direct control over their own people. I could see the army was bigger, but unhappy. Morale was low. They felt conquered, not welcomed. Force alone wouldn't win their hearts. They needed something to believe in. I used a magic amplifier so every soldier could hear me clearly. I know many of you feel cheated, I said. You think my kingdom stole your homes and your pride. You're wrong. I'm not taking your glory. I'm giving you something far greater. I pointed at the oil field construction site. That's the heart of our kingdom. It will give us endless power. Our warriors will wear the strongest armor and carry the sharpest weapons. I pointed at my magic crossbow squad. See them? They're just the first ones to benefit. Soon, every one of you will have weapons even more powerful than theirs. I promise you. Our kingdom's iron hooves will march across the entire continent. Every enemy in our path will be crushed to dust. You won't be small-time tribal warriors anymore. You'll be soldiers of a great empire that conquered the world. Your glory will echo through the ages. I watched their eyes change. The bitterness and numbness slowly shifted to curiosity, then longing, then a spark of real excitement. The strongest armor? The deadliest weapons? Part of a world-conquering empire? That sounded a lot better than being a poor tribal fighter on barren land. The young warriors especially were burning with new energy. I knew the seed was planted. Now I just needed real results to make it grow. To celebrate our kingdom growing stronger. Today, unlimited meat and ale for everyone. Long live the Wind Hoof Kingdom. Long live His Majesty. The moment they heard free meat and drinks, these simple warriors erupted in cheers. Whatever resentment they'd felt vanished instantly. I smiled watching the celebration below. With these three tribes absorbed, my kingdom's population had passed 50,000. My standing army had jumped to 8,000 soldiers. Most importantly, I'd unified every centaur force in the region and locked down complete control of this territory. Now I could finally close the doors and focus on climbing my industrial technology tree in peace. The system chimed in my head, confirming my territory had expanded significantly and awarding me 3,000 fortune points for the hidden achievement, Unifier of the Wasteland. Everything was moving in the right direction. For the next 2 weeks, the entire oil development zone was running at full speed. The dwarves' incredible craftsmanship and the goblins' relentless work ethic got the first oil refinery tower built amazingly fast. It stood over 30 meters tall, made entirely of heat-resistant black iron rock, like a dark steel giant rising from the wasteland. Thick pipes wrapped around it like blood vessels, connecting underground oil tanks to cooling pools in the distance. Borland barely slept the whole time. He lived on the construction site, screaming at any goblin who moved too slowly. But his bloodshot eyes were glowing with excitement. He could feel something world-changing being born inside that black tower. I was there almost every day too. I didn't know the hands-on building techniques, but I used my knowledge from the modern world to suggest critical improvements. I redesigned the inside of the distillation tower, adding more separation trays so different grades of oil could be split apart more precisely. I even introduced the basic idea of catalytic cracking. The technology here couldn't pull it off yet, but the concept alone drove Borland half crazy with fascination. He spent his spare time scratching his head trying to figure it out. Then the big day came, the refinery's first test run. Borland, Grisnik, and I gathered in the control room at the base of the tower with all the key engineers. Reports came in one after another. Pipes checked, pressure normal, oil pumping into the furnace, temperature reaching target levels, distillation beginning. Everyone stared at one specific pipe, the one at the height where diesel should condense. Minutes crawled by. The crude oil was heated into vapor, pushed up the tower, and started cooling at different levels. Different substances turned back to liquid at different heights. Then Grisnik screamed, "There! There!" A drop appeared in the observation pipe. Then another, pale yellow, slightly thick liquid, trickling down into the collection barrel below. "We did it!" Borland slammed his palms so hard the sound echoed through the room. "This is the blood that'll make steam engines roar." The dwarves erupted in cheers. Grisnik was dancing around like he could already see mountains of gold coins rolling toward him. I let out a breath and smiled. The first barrel of diesel, my industrial empire had finally gone from blueprints to reality. I dipped my finger in, smelled it, rubbed it between my fingers. Still some impurities, not perfectly refined yet, but it was definitely diesel. The system confirmed the mission complete with a perfect rating, since I'd improved the key technology and boosted both quality and output. The rewards came flooding in. The basic industry, tech tree unlocked, blueprints for the -1 Malawian Kwacha steam water pump, and the gear-driven forging press, plus 5,000 fortune points. I opened the new tech tree and my heart started pounding. It had 3 branches. Energy and power. Steam engine technology was now available, with internal combustion engines locked behind high-purity gasoline and precision machining. Materials science. Blast furnace steelmaking needed coke and quality iron ore, and alloy technology came after that. Mechanical manufacturing. Gears and transmissions were unlocked, with standardized parts waiting behind lathe and milling machine blueprints. This wasn't just a tech tree, it was a highway to the top of the world. Steam engines, internal combustion engines, blast furnace steel. Any single one of these would start a revolution, and now they were all within my reach. The steam pump would solve our slow manual oil extraction, multiplying our crude output massively. The forging press was even more important, with thousands of tons of pressing force. I could manufacture precision parts for magic crossbows, and even start building the core components for the dwarves' dream, steam golems. I called Borland over and sketched the pump design from memory onto a sheepskin scroll. When he looked at it, steam power driving pistons and levers, his eyes went wide and his hands shook like he was holding something sacred. "What genius designed this?" he whispered. I told Grisnik to send every trade caravan he had to buy high-quality iron ore, as much as possible, cost no object, and recruit at least 5,000 more workers. We were expanding. He nodded so fast his head nearly fell off. He knew the real wealth storm was just getting started. I was feeling unstoppable, ready to turn every piece of my industrial vision into reality. But what I didn't know was that far to the north, in the burning Bone Highlands, something dark was stirring. Inside an evil temple built from bones and black stone, an orc shaman knelt before a pool of churning lava, performing a ritual. A voice rumbled up from deep underground. The destruction lord himself. He said he could sense something foul, something mechanical, polluting the earth beneath his feet. He ordered his followers to go south, find the source of this blasphemy against nature, and destroy it, along with all the clanking scrap metal that came with it. The orc shaman smashed his forehead against the ground and swore that destruction would come. A storm was heading my way, and I had no idea it was coming. With the blueprints and plenty of fuel, the dwarves worked their magic. In just 10 days, the first -1 Malawian Kwacha steam water pump was assembled right in the heart of the oil field. It was a massive beast, a heavy steel boiler, a huge flywheel, brass pipes everywhere, and thick piston rods. When Borland shoveled the first load of diesel into the furnace and pulled the main valve, the steam whistle screamed across the wasteland for the first time. The high-pressure steam pushed the pistons drove the connecting rods, and the great flywheel began to spin. The whole machine roared with a steady rhythm, like a steel giant waking up from a long sleep. The pump pipe reached deep underground into the oil layer. Black crude came shooting up like a dark fountain, pouring into our new storage pools. The extraction speed was at least 100 times faster than hauling buckets by hand. Grisnik nearly fainted from excitement. Costs going down, profits going through the roof. Borland stroked the rumbling machine like it was alive, already dreaming of steam golems stomping across battlefields. I felt it too. This was the power of industry. No flashy magic, just raw, unstoppable force that could move the world. I told Borland to build 20 more of these machines. I wanted the entire oil field thundering with steel heartbeats. Then I handed him the forging press blueprints. When he saw that design, steam-powered hammers delivering thousands of tons of force, he froze completely. If the pump gave him hope, this press opened the door to something divine. He looked at me like I was a god. He couldn't imagine what else was inside my head. After that, things moved incredibly fast. More refinery towers went up, pumping out diesel constantly. Some fuel powered the growing fleet of pumps. The rest went to the dwarf workshops to run the forging press once it was ready. A basic industrial cycle was taking shape: extract oil, refine it, use it to power machines that build more machines. My kingdom was transforming before my eyes. I poured 4 of my 7 shares of profit straight into military spending. Grisnik's trade caravans brought in mountains of iron, ore, timber, and supplies from across the continent. My army grew from 8,000 to 15,000, all wearing matching dwarf-forged steel armor and weapons. The magic crossbow units expanded from 1 squad to 300 elite shooters, the sharpest spear in my arsenal. All of this happened in just 1 month. But I didn't realize my rapid growth had caught someone's attention. Far to the north in the Burning Bone Highlands, an orc scout named Ganga knelt before the Grand Shaman Gulrash, reporting what he'd seen in the south. He described my kingdom, the black towers belching smoke, the steel machines that roared on their own. He couldn't fully explain what an industrial zone was, but he told them about the dwarves and goblins working alongside my centaurs. Gulrash despised everything mechanical. To the destruction cult, anything unnatural, especially dwarf machines and goblin alchemy, was blasphemy that needed to be wiped out. When he asked about my army, Ganga's body shook. He told them we had over 10,000 troops in full steel armor and weapons that could shoot glowing bolts from impossibly far away. He'd watched us kill a 4th-rank iron-armored rhino from 1,000 meters out. The beast never even got close before it was riddled with holes. That got Gulrash's attention. A weapon that could kill a 4th-rank armored beast from 1,000 meters was a serious threat to his orc legions. He decided the Destruction Lord's prophecy was right. We had touched the forbidden. Our filthy scrap metal was polluting the sacred natural order. He stepped out of his bone temple, looked down at the endless green-skinned army training in the valley below, and gave his order. Assemble 30,000 orc soldiers under warlord Skullcrusher Kargas. March south. Target the Wind-Hoof Kingdom. He wanted to show us that our precious steel was worthless against pure destructive power. The orc army began to move. And I had no idea. I was too busy being excited about the forging press nearly being finished, planning the next steps of my industrial empire. I didn't know that a bloody war aimed straight at everything I'd built had already begun.